In a dark room, our guy had no idea what was about to go down. After passing out in front of his PC with a can of beer, utterly confused, our main character realizes he's been dropped right into the world of the game. Just then, a girl with platinum, blonde hair screams in desperation, warning that even stronger demons are on their way. Wasting no time, our warrior says he'll take care of them real quick and lunges forward. Like a human meteor, our guy goes all out against the beasts, and swinging his massive weapon, he unleashes a brutal strike on the monsters. Face to face with the ugly mugs of these creatures, fear is simply not an option. A massive pillar of light then splits the earth in two, cleaving through everything in its path. The force of the impact shatters the high-level demons in the blink of an eye. As rocks rain down, the attack kicks up an insane amount of dust. The result is just a pile of crushed demonic bodies on the ground. In the middle of the smoking crater, the dust begins to settle. Unscathed in the center of the hole, our tank stands up like it was nothing. Emanating a wicked aura, our hero remarks that the demon realm doesn't mess around. Facing the uphill battle ahead, our guy notes that the road to the archdemon is going to be intense. But shrugging it off, the big guy just keeps moving forward, not really caring. Soon fireballs are whizzing past as our MC already anticipates the earful he's going to get from Melissa. The impact creates a gigantic explosion behind the group, and just as predicted, the red-haired girl is already screaming the warrior's name at the top of her lungs. Without a shred of mercy, she gives him a serious dressing down, reminding him she ordered no one to charge in alone like a maniac. To calm things down, the team's priest calls out the mage's name. In the same instant, he blocks a brutal punch from a demon using his shield of light. At that moment, the hero Gale jumps into action, slicing through the monsters with his sword. His order is clear, telling them to save the lecture for later because the monsters are the priority. Frustrated with the hero's perfect attitude, the redhead huffs in anger. With her hands clasped, the priestess Cyril prays, asking for the fighting spirit of the god Atala. Worried, she fears that Kadim is pushing himself way too hard to protect the team. Suddenly, a giant mace smashes a demon's face into the ground. Smiling calmly, the priest Gordon tells the girl not to get so worked up. Defending his partner, the brute says that Kadim definitely knows what he's doing. While our MC is busy pummeling the demons, the team decides to focus on clearing the area. In his thoughts, our tank reveals his name to the audience. His role is to be the front line for the hero's party, focused on annihilating the big bad. His title as the Great Warrior of the God of Battle commands respect everywhere. But on the inside, our guy is just an ordinary dude from the real world. The truth is, his body was taken over, and he was thrown straight into this hellish game, where the classic mission is to gather a crew and bring the pain to the demon lord. For some players, this would be the perfect adventure. But for a modern guy who's never even swatted a fly, the reality is a whole lot heavier. Now he's trapped in a world surrounded by hordes of bloodthirsty monsters. With bloodshot eyes, our guy activates his passive skill, drinking demon blood to get stronger, at the cost of his sanity. Covered in the remains of his enemies, there's only one thought in the warrior's head. In the midst of the carnage, our guy just wants to end this nightmare already, to finally get the heck out of this cruel world and go back home in peace. Overcome by fury, our hero wants to escape this cursed place as fast as possible. Atop a mountain of corpses, he becomes a true monster. Fueled by pure rage, his teeth sink into an enemy's neck, drinking the blood straight from the source. The level of insanity terrifies even the female demons, who retreat in desperation. With zero control, our MC devours the flesh of the beasts, completely losing it. His only goal now is to consume every single one of the scumbags who gets in his way. A macabre smile appears on his face, the look of someone who has officially gone full Joker. Until a beam of divine light hits the battlefield, trying to purify the warrior's mind. Little by little, the voices of his friends echo in his head, trying to break the trance. Thanks to Melissa's gentle touch, our tank finally regains consciousness. Bound by chains of holy light, he's restrained to keep him from doing something crazy. Confused by the situation, the big guy looks at his friend, not quite understanding what just happened. Looking around, our guy can't believe the bizarre mess he's just made. Through the system panel, reality hits hard, showing that the demonic frenzy almost made him take out his own team. It becomes clear that the warning about losing his sanity wasn't just some silly game mechanic. Immersed in a sea of blood, our guy feels the madness truly devouring his brain. To his horror, the taste of demon blood that was once disgusting now seems sweet. On the edge of control, the fear of not being able to hold on until the end of the journey consumes the warrior. Several voices in his head tell him to eliminate and devour absolutely everything in his path. But the redhead's tight hug pushes away the dark thoughts once and for all. With a gentle expression, she asks our MC to stop blaming himself for the incident. According to the mage, since he's protected everyone until now, it's the team's turn to return the favor. The group gathers around the big guy, showing their unconditional support. The healers promise to use purification magic nonstop to keep his mind shielded. In a joking tone, the priest warns that he'll bring the hammer down on him if he freaks out again. After the tension breaks, the blonde hero sheathes his sword and asks if the break for drama is over. Back to the grind, the crew needs to get a move on because the world isn't going to save itself. With his hand extended, the leader reminds him that they are all crucial pieces in this suicide mission. Face to face with the blonde hero, our tank realizes he's not alone in this mess. With a firm handshake, they continue their journey together, even with their bodies and minds wrecked. Finally, the blonde hero shouts his partner's name at the top of his lungs, relieved. At the center of the chaos, the big guy is locked in a brutal struggle against the feared archdemon. Covered in a sinister red aura, the villain shows its fangs ready for the kill. But a massive spinning attack of pure energy hits the beast head-on. With a sigh of relief, the group's leader is grateful that the nightmare is over. Wrecked by the blow, the giant monster begins to crumble into pieces. With a deafening roar, the creature's body turns to dust and vanishes into the air. As the smoke clears, the battlefield falls into absolute silence. Overcome by exhaustion, the red-haired mage asks in disbelief if the war is really over. Her body nearly gives in to fatigue after using up all her magic. Beside her, the priest confirms that by divine grace they have finally won. Still in shock, the girl processes the idea that they're safe. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light overtakes everyone on the scene. Like a bolt of lightning, a pillar of divine light descends from the heavens, tearing through the darkness. Startled by the sudden brightness, the team tries to shield themselves, asking what the heck is going on. Filled with concern, the white-haired priestess looks for the big guy amidst the confusion. Without a word, our warrior drops his heavy weapon to the ground with a dull thud. Desperate, the blonde hero tells him to stop, warning that it's crazy to walk into an unknown light. Standing before the mysterious rift, the tank ignores all the team's warnings. With a serene smile on his face, he looks back one last time. His final words reveal that it was an honor to fight alongside them, instead of just watching through a screen. Ignoring the hero's shouts, our MC walks straight into the portal. In the blink of an eye, the light completely swallows his body. Sucked into the great beyond, the warrior plummets into a dark, infinite void. His heavy body lands hard on the cold stone floor. Behind him, the dimensional rift closes quickly, taking the magical world with it. All that's left is the sad image of the priestess, crying out his name into the void. Step by step, the sound of his boots echoes in the lonely darkness. Walking alone in the dark, our guy moves forward without fear of what comes next. Used to that emptiness, his only thought is what he'll do first as soon as he's back in the real world. His first plan is to grab a cold beer and crash in bed, vowing never to play a medieval fantasy game again. Despite the guilt of not saying a proper goodbye, he accepts the reality that his companions were just part of a game. With a certain melancholy, he declares that the great warrior Kadam will now be gone forever. Right in front of him, a line of light opens up, forming the exit to his home. However, upon looking at the panel, his eyes widen in pure shock and despair. Breaking into a cold sweat, he tries to convince himself it's all just a nightmare, and starts to laugh. Before him, the system notification glows brightly, shattering all his hopes. His mind completely collapses, and the big guy laughs like a maniac. Having completely snapped, the barbarian roars with laughter in the middle of nowhere, unable to believe his bad luck. That laugh of pure madness echoes through the darkness, showing that the torture is far from over. On the sinister panel, the message, New Game Plus glows, announcing that the story has started all over again. The scene cuts to a sunny road with a caravan of prisoners. Walking with difficulty, chained men are escorted like animals. Guards armed to the teeth march around, keeping order under threat. In the middle of the line, an old man grumbles nonstop, swearing he was unjustly arrested for just stealing a tiny bronze ring. Out of patience, one of the guards yells for the prisoners to shut their mouths already. To command respect, the soldier pokes the old man with the sharp tip of his spear. Muttering under his breath, the guard calls the captives noisy trash. Right behind, a merchant seizes the opportunity and calls out to the guard, whining for justice. Tired of the complaining, the guard turns his head and asks what the heck he wants to complain about now. Desperate, the prisoner swears he never sold demon items and begs to speak with the inspector who planted the evidence. In silence, the soldier just stares at the poor guy with a look of absolute boredom. With tears in his eyes, the man claims that big shots invent false crimes just to gain fame. With a click of his tongue, the guard points to the paladin up ahead, reminding him that the guy's rank is untouchable. Clenching his teeth, the guard warns that if he steps out of line, he'll lose his own head right there. Raising his voice, he intimidates the merchant, asking if he has the guts to doubt the Paladin of Elga. To end the matter once and for all, the guard tells the guy to get back in his place and wait to be released if he's innocent. Cowed by fear, the man obeys and returns to the line, completely defeated. In his thoughts, the soldier admits the guy is screwed, since it was the Paladin himself who set the trap. But putting the merchant's problem aside, the guard's gaze shifts to something much more bizarre in the line. Behind the poor vendor marches a massive figure with his head down. Bound by thick chains, our MC walks silently as the guards wonder how they captured a monster like that. In the middle of that armed escort, the brute just goes with the flow, not reacting to anything. Completely lost, he tries to understand what kind of madness threw him in here. Looking at his own hands, the warrior notices his body is the same, but all the insane strength he had is gone. At least the bloodlust and guilt that were frying his brain have also vanished. Connecting the dots, he realizes that the blasted, New Game Plus message reset all his progress to level 0. Even though he gets the logic, he's still frustrated to be starting in a worse position. Out of nowhere, the grumpy old man next to him gets our barbarian's attention. With trembling hands, the old man holds out a piece of dried root to him. Smiling gently, the old man offers the root to chew on to trick his hunger during the long walk. Shocked by the random act of kindness, our guy stares at the old man in total silence. Without asking for anything in return, the man explains that he was saved by barbarians in the past, and that root was the only way he could repay the debt. Holding the twig between his iron shackles, the MC feels a drop of humanity in this rotten world. Curious about the unusual situation, the big guy asks how the old man got caught and receives a sincere, "I don't know" in response. After hearing the explanation, the old man lets out a tired sigh. In our MC's thoughts, the hostility of paladins and priests towards pagans is pure insanity, since believing in a different god shouldn't be a crime. Confused by the conversation, he asks what this Lucania Empire is all about. In his memory, that place was just a small kingdom in the center of the continent back in the old days of the game. With this bizarre change, our warrior realizes he's landed in a parallel world and immediately asks where they're going. Without beating around the bush, the old man explains that they will all be taken to the holy capital to face the inquisitors of Elga. Upon hearing the news, the big guy thinks it's actually a good thing, commenting that at least they won't take him out right away. Shocked by his partner's coldness, the old man's eyes widen as he asks what the heck is good about that. Trembling with fear, he says that the inquisitors are obsessed with torture and treat pagans like disposable toys. According to rumors, the torturers drive nails into their gums and pour molten metal straight into the victim's nostrils. Suddenly, a knight in armor brings his sword down on a prisoner without a shred of mercy. With a dull thud, the poor guy drops to the ground, done for on the spot. Showing off the stained blade, the paladin bellows that anyone who insults the church will pay with their own life. Turning his head arrogantly, the blonde guy issues another threat. The horse then takes slow steps forward, heightening the terror on the road. Straight to the point, the knight points at our barbarian and asks if he's the one causing the trouble. In complete silence, the tank just glares up at the pretty boy. Certain of his superiority, the soldier gives the prisoner a chance to bow his head and beg for forgiveness to stay alive. Instead of surrendering, a mocking smile appears on our MC's face. Furious at the audacity, the fancy pants gets offended and shouts, "How dare a pagan mock me?" With his sword glowing brightly, the paladin charges, saying that this is pure blasphemy. Without a hint of fear, the barbarian's smile only widens. Surprised by the reaction, the blonde guy gets the shock of his life. With his hands shackled, our warrior catches the magic blade in mid-air without getting a single scratch. Stuck in place, the soldier strains, but the sword doesn't move a millimeter. Desperate against the enemy's brute force, he tells the big guy to let go of the weapon. Very calmly, our guy says he'll grant the request and releases the blade all at once. Without support, the knight loses his balance and nearly tumbles off his mount. Mad with rage over the humiliation, the blonde guy promises to judge the wretched pagan right there, but the next second, his eyes nearly pop out of his head in sheer terror. In an absurd leap, the brute flies over the paladin as if he weighed nothing at all. The heavyweight then lands, creating a boom capable of cracking the earth. As dust kicks up, the impact throws the knight and scatters the guards along the path. Lying in the grass, the fancy pants tries to get up, all dirty. Away from the dust, our MC just watches the scene with a bored expression. Scratching the ground in hatred, the blonde guy curses the barbarian for daring to raise a hand against him. In a swift movement, the warrior of God takes a spear from a guard, vowing revenge. In his thoughts, the big guy notes that paladins are still tough, and that little fall wasn't enough. With pure magic at the tip of his weapon, the soldier launches the javelin towards the enemy. Eyeing the attack, our guy senses the imminent danger. Drawing his sword again, the blonde guy starts to call upon his god Elga for more power. Covered in a blinding light, he asks for the strength to annihilate the servant of demons. With veins popping on his face, the kid lets out a war cry. Like a bolt of holy energy, the paladin unleashes a devastating frontal assault. Crossing the distance in the blink of an eye, the light advances mercilessly. Noticing the absurd speed of the blow, our tank realizes he can't dodge it. Focused on the attack, he plants his feet and prepares for the worst. A colossal explosion of light engulfs the entire battlefield. Amidst the shock, the iron chains shatter, freeing the prisoner's wrists. With the damage done, the road turns into a crater full of rubble. Emerging from the smoke, the warrior coughs, revealing a nasty, glowing gash right on his chest. Impressed by the scene, the soldier walks towards him, surprised to see the guy still alive. With pure arrogance, he admits that the barbarian's body is tough to take down. Frustrated by his own disadvantage, our guy mentally curses the reset of his powers, leaving only his passive blood skill. Feeling the weight of his weakened state, he's sure he would have won easily if there were at least one low-level monster nearby. Stuck in this tight spot, our MC starts sniffing the air, catching a familiar scent. Recognizing the rotten odor, his eyes light up, and he looks straight at a destroyed cart. Metallic footsteps echo as the Paladin approaches with his sword pointed. Standing a few feet away, the blonde guy acknowledges his rival's strength but warns that the fun ends here. With his weapon raised, the fancy pants tells the pagan to accept divine forgiveness through his demise. Out of nowhere, the knight freezes in place with an expression of pure disgust. With a hand on his nose, the kid asks what that disgusting smell is fooling the air. With a wicked smile on his face, our MC starts to chuckle softly. Soon, the restrained laugh turns into an insane cackle, leaving the blonde guy confused, thinking the prisoner has finally lost it. In a mocking tone, the warrior announces that the Paladin's beloved god has just chosen the enemy's side. Without warning, he slams his hand down, shattering an abandoned wooden crate on the ground. From inside the wreckage, the brute pulls out the decapitated head of a horrifying demon. Faced with the gruesome scene, the knight recoils, paralyzed with terror. On our guy's chest, the magical wound reacts, crying out for energy. With his eyes hidden by his bangs, a maniacal smile dominates the warrior's face. With the monstrous head in his hands, the barbarian prepares for a feast. With pure brute force, he crushes the beast's skull as if it were a tomato. Drops of black, rotten blood drip freely through the air. Lifting the carcass, our tank takes a shower of demon blood, activating his most overpowered ability. Completely in shock, the guards and the Paladin watch in absolute silence as the monster awakens right in front of them. Covering his nose in disgust, the Paladin complains that the prisoner is too filthy to get close to. With repulsion on his face, the blonde guy points to a random guard and orders him to finish the scumbag. Hesitantly, the guard advances as our MC begins to overflow with a demonic aura. Shaking in his boots, the soldier holds his spear, stammering that he's going to take out the prisoner. With a desperate cry, the guy charges forward as the barbarian's muscles swell to an absurd size. Before he can even blink, a violent thud echoes across the battlefield. Straight into the flesh, the brutal impact shatters the guard's chest instantly. With just one hand, our tank lifts the soldier by the neck as if he were a doll. Nearly out of breath, the poor guy begs for his life, completely terrified. Completely shocked, the fancy pants watches the scene, paralyzed with terror. With pure brute force, the big guy crushes the man's neck without the slightest bit of pity. In his thoughts, the warrior assesses that the buff from that blood is weak, but it'll do. With glowing red eyes and a blood-streaked face, he bellows that this is more than enough. Faced with that demonic sight, the other guards retreat in terror. Stuttering uncontrollably, one of the soldiers can barely form the word, monster. In total panic, a guard screams, warning that the guy is a wild beast. Weapons are dropped to the ground as cowardice speaks louder. Yelling for them to run, the guards flee desperately to save their own skins. Annoyed, the Paladin orders the troops to hold formation, reminding them that the target is unarmed and wounded. Yelling at the top of his lungs, the blonde guy threatens to severely punish any coward who abandons his post. Trying to calm himself, the fancy pants tells himself that a few spear thrusts will solve the problem. Out of nowhere, the rotten demon head flies swiftly in his direction. Caught by surprise, the soldier takes the hit and falls backward hard. Lying on the ground, the kid groans in pain after the blow. Looking to the side, he recognizes the monstrous skull that hit him. In that same instant, a chill runs down the divine warrior's spine. His eyes widen as the real danger enters his field of vision. Like a runaway train, our MC runs like mad towards him. Quickly, the blonde guy leaps back, drawing his holy sword. Invoking the power of the god Elga, he demands strength to exterminate that servant of darkness. With fury in his eyes, the Paladin's blade ignites with a blinding light. Tearing through the wind, the barbarian jumps with clenched fists, ready for impact. Shouting his god's name, the kid engages in a frontal assault with all his might. A brutal clash then explodes in the middle of the road, kicking up an insane amount of dust. Certain of victory, the soldier smiles, telling the pagan to ask for forgiveness in the afterlife. But that smile completely vanishes when our guy catches the holy blade with his bare hand and straight up mocks the rookie. Breaking into a cold sweat, the blonde guy realizes the prisoner's strength is completely unreal. Through sheer brutality, the big guy crushes the weapon's metal with his fingers. Without giving him a break, the tank pulls his fist back with crushing pressure. The punch connects right in the fancy pants' face, knocking out teeth and sending blood flying. Pinned to the ground, the soldier becomes a punching bag, taking hit after hit. Completely beaten, the poor guy tries to ask the monster to stop the beatdown. With his face disfigured, the Paladin cries, begging for forgiveness just this once. Standing tall, the barbarian just listens to the pathetic pleas of the defeated worm. Just when the guy thinks he's been spared and gives thanks, our MC prepares the finishing move in the worst way possible. Dragging his body on the ground, the blonde guy curses the barbarian, vowing revenge at any cost. Out of strength, the poor soul tries to crawl far away from certain doom. Muttering promises to the god Elga, the soldier freezes upon noticing something bizarre in his path. A sharp spear is stuck in the dirt right next to his face. Heavy boots mark the slow, terrifying approach of the executioner. The immense shadow of our warrior covers the paladin's wounded and trembling body. In a pure panic, the kid's eye twitches as he faces his imminent end. Picking up the fallen sword, the brute mocks the enemy's unwavering faith. Exuding pure bloodlust, he wishes the blonde guy finds his useless deity in the underworld. Desperate, the soldier screams, asking him to wait just a little longer. But calling the guy Elga's little lapdog, the barbarian plunges the blade straight into his back. Finally, silence reigns as the tank releases the weapon stuck in the ground. With his face painted red, our guy stares at the horizon without a hint of remorse. Quickly, his gaze focuses on the cowardly guards still running across the meadow. Tripping over each other, the guards continue their desperate flight for their lives. Picking up another fallen spear, the guy remembers the most valuable lesson from his past life. Up ahead, the soldiers run breathlessly, thinking they've escaped the massacre. Relieved, one of the old-timers mutters that he must be safe now. In the middle of the run, a tear in the wind surprises the guard. Surgical precision sends the spear through the guard's neck, spraying blood everywhere. Tumbling hard into the dust, the victim proves that rule number 1 is to never leave loose ends. Behind a thicket, a cowering soldier tries to be as quiet as possible. With sharp instincts, our hunter turns his gaze directly to the fugitive's hiding spot. With his whole body tensed, he fires another javelin like a heat-seeking missile. Cutting through the air, the weapon travels at high speed, tearing through the wind. The precise impact impales the hidden guard's head, taking out the pest on the spot. Suddenly, one of the prisoners shouts, calling the barbarian brother. Surrounded by the other freed men, the old man praises the dispatching of the wretched paladin. Full of confidence, the prisoner approaches, wanting to chat and get his shackles off. Without warning, our MC delivers a brutal punch, exploding the overconfident guy's head into 1,000 pieces. Gripped by terror, the prisoners face their demise up close, their faces bathed in blood. With his feet firmly on the ground, the brute remembers the lesson he learned in his past life. In total desperation, the survivors retreat, trying to escape the warrior's fury. Covered in a red aura, our MC decides he won't leave any loose ends behind. In tears, one of the captives raises his chained hands, asking what they did wrong to deserve this. Mercilessly, the big guy raises the spear as the poor soul begs for his life. In one swift blow, the weapon comes down, tearing through the flesh of the man who was crying for help. Bathed in blood, the barbarian pauses for a moment in complete silence. Around him, the green field has now become a veritable cemetery of mutilated bodies. Cold and calculating, he concludes that leaving witnesses alive would only attract the Empire's high-ranking paladins. With a firm grip on the spear, the warrior declares that he can't take that risk. No way. With his whole body shaking, the last prisoner curses the pagan with a trembling voice. Lying in the grass, the man tries to curl up to escape his inevitable fate. A scream of pain soon echoes as the blade sinks directly into the prisoner's chest. Standing before the last remaining survivor, our tank takes a deep breath and assesses the situation. With an empty gaze, the barbarian holds the blood-dripping spear without showing any reaction. Faced with the fatal threat, the merchant screams at the top of his lungs, swearing he's innocent. Kneeling on the ground, the old man begs for mercy, stating he did absolutely nothing wrong. Like a whining child, the man clasps his hands, desperately asking to stay alive. Unfazed, the warrior just asks why the heck he should spare his life. Between sobs, the prisoner plays the family card, mentioning he has a wife and kids waiting at home. Casually, our MC agrees that he seems innocent but warns that's not a good enough reason not to finish him. About to be executed, the vendor screams the word "guide" in a final act of desperation. With bulging eyes, he asks if the big guy doesn't need someone to show him the way. Surprised by the offer, the barbarian freezes in place and repeats the word with curiosity. Seizing the opening, the man explains that he's a traveling merchant and knows every corner of the continent. Interested in the guy's usefulness, our hero decides to ask a few questions about this Lucani empire. Utterly confused, the old man doesn't understand the warrior's question about the kingdom's status. In his thoughts, the vendor concludes that the tank must be a savage who's been isolated in the mountains for centuries. Out of patience, our MC growls, demanding the old man answer the blasted question already. Under great stress, the merchant reveals that 248 years have passed since the empire's founding. Shocked by the information, the big guy asks what year it would be according to the old lunar calendar. After a quick thought, the man guesses that it must be over 1,100 years. Faced with this bombshell, it finally sinks in that all his game knowledge has become ancient history. Immediately, our hero asks what happened to the church and the demon realm. To explain the situation, the vendor details that the continent was unified and then divided into 3 parts. According to reports, the church gained power with the invasion, and the demon realm became a place from which no one returns alive. Perplexed, The barbarian can't believe that no one has ever returned from that inferno. In his mind, the faces of his old companions appear, bringing a weight to his chest. Hopefully, he mentions his team's names, but the old man swears he's never heard of them. Suddenly, the old man's memory seems to click upon hearing the name Melissa. Our warrior's eyes immediately light up, awaiting confirmation. Scratching his head, the man tries to remember if it was Elisa or Melisa but confirms the name sounds familiar. Frustrated, the MC finds it impossible that the heroes who defeated the archdemon were simply forgotten. With clenched teeth, he starts to wonder if this world is really a continuation of his first playthrough. Confused by the infestation, he asks why the continent is still crawling with demons. Terrified, the merchant says that some believe it's a divine punishment to purify the corrupt world. Other rumors say a mad wizard opened the gates, or that a supreme evil is about to descend. Pointing a finger to the sky, the old man says that the absolute truth belongs only to God. Immersed in a deep silence, the warrior absorbs the weight of this distorted reality. Without a word, he drops the blood-stained weapon on the grass. With his back to the survivor, the big guy begins to walk aimlessly. Putting the pieces together, it's clear he's been thrown 300 years into the future. Embittered, he realizes he was kicked out of his original world and now from the world he tried to save. All his effort and knowledge are useless in this new era. In his head, the longing for his companions hits him like a punch to the gut. Dejected, our MC accepts the harsh reality that they have all turned to dust by now. Memories of bloody battles haunt his mind, making him question the meaning of it all. Is it worth it to keep drinking disgusting blood and fighting against madness forever? With no guarantee that he'll ever go home, the new game message hammers in his vision. Hopeless, he imagines that at the end of this journey, another blasted restart screen will just pop up. Determined to end the suffering, the barbarian points the spear at his own neck. Horrified by the scene, the merchant doesn't understand his savior's suicidal act. With the sharp blade against his throat, our hero feels the chill of his end. Ready for the final impact, he prepares to end the game with his own hands. Desperate shouts come from the old man's mouth, begging the big guy to stop this madness. In his thoughts, the MC knows that continuing will only bring more regret and pain. With the weapon's handle firm in his hands, the decision to give up seems made, and irreversible. His only request is that there isn't a game over room mocking him in the afterlife. Focused on his own end, the tip of the spear threatens to tear his jugular without mercy. Out of nowhere, a sweet voice echoes in his memory, talking about founding a tower of magic. In that same instant, the warrior's eyes fly open in pure shock. After dropping the weapon, he grabs the prisoner by the shoulders and asks again about the name Melissa. Out of fear, the man stutters but confesses that the name of the first magic master was something like that. Filled with urgency, our guy demands to know the location, and the merchant reveals that the tower is in the city of Vistana. Warning him about the distance, the merchant says they are right in the center of Imperial territory. With a grim expression, our warrior processes the information that the journey could take over 2 months. Out of nowhere, a dark smile appears at the corner of the barbarian's mouth. In his thoughts, he curses himself for remembering the raid head and her annoying words about kicking the bucket any way she wanted. Without losing focus, the big guy points at the old man and orders him to be the guide to the tower by the fastest route. To ensure obedience, our MC warns that he has no time to waste with dawdling. Trying to get out of it, the prisoner stammers that he can offer something much more valuable in exchange for his freedom. Cold and direct, the tank cuts him off right there, stating that the payment will be the poor guy's own life. Trembling from head to toe, the man watches the warrior rip the keys from a guard's corpse. With his orders given, the MC tells the old man to get himself free quickly and grab anything useful for the road. Rummaging through the cart's wreckage, the barbarian finds a longsword lying on the ground. Holding the new weapon, he decides the old piece of junk should be good enough in a pinch. Even while eyeing the dead paladin's magic spear, our hero knows that blessed weapons reject unauthorized users. With a frustrated sigh, he thinks that the axe from his first life would be missed. But at least he has the skill to forge something decent. Relieved not to have been turned into paste, the old man packs his bag, glad to have saved his own skin. Suddenly, the sight of the demon's head impaled on the spear makes the merchant's stomach turn with disgust. Ignoring the bizarre scene, the warrior fastens the canteen and sword to his leather belt. Ready to hit the road, our guy gives the signal to depart with an unshackable voice. Under the red evening sky, the bizarre duo walks towards the Tower of Magic. Behind them, crows circle over the carnage left on the dirt road. Cutting the scene, the focus shifts to the same road days later, after the caravan went missing. Near the wreckage, reinforcements arrive and find the young paladin's body thrown amidst the chaos. Shocked by the massacre, a knight reports that absolutely all guards and prisoners were mercilessly wiped out. In shining armor, the high-ranking paladin Helia glares at the scene with a cold stare. Her order is direct, telling the troop to search for any clue about the culprit, because they can't just return empty-handed. Immediately, the soldier salutes and goes to carry out the order. Hissing with rage, The blonde woman curses the killers for daring to take out not just a soldier of God, but especially for taking out the blasted archbishop's favorite protégé. Under the light of the full moon, the atmosphere in the forest is tense and silent. Around the campfire, the pair of travelers rests in the middle of nowhere. The sound of crackling flames is the only thing that breaks the silence of the dark night. Blowing smoke into the air, the barbarian sleeps soundly by the edge of the fire. Beside him, the merchant's red backpack rests on the ground. Breathing heavily, the old man runs desperately through the trees as if death itself were chasing him. In a cold sweat, he tries to put as much distance as possible between himself and the camp before the monster wakes up. After running a marathon, the poor guy stops for a second to catch his breath, thinking he's finally escaped. Wasting no time, he swears to himself that he needs to get as far away as possible from that human-shaped nightmare. Initially, the old man thought it was a good thing to have a giant bodyguard while traveling alone through the Empire's territory, but reality hit hard when he realized his so-called companion devoured demons and slaughtered dozens of people without batting an eye. Even worse, the merchant remembers the guy's coldness, who even refused normal food. With a shiver down his spine, the old man relives the short, direct memories of the brute, just telling him to make the fire bigger. Completely stoic, the warrior rarely opened his mouth, preferring absolute silence over any conversation. Faced with this statue of muscle, the prisoner admits he can't read his intentions at all. In the scared man's head, that guy was nothing more than a wild beast ready to pounce. Convinced of the danger, the old man sums up his days as if he were performing tricks inside a lion's mouth. However, the psychological terror wasn't even the biggest problem of that forced alliance. Complaining nonstop, the old man grumbles that the barbarian has a simply insane marching pace. As a merchant used to walking all day, he prides himself on his stamina but was losing the race badly. The big guy constantly asked for directions, and before the old man could finish speaking, the giant was already disappearing over the horizon. Without the slightest bit of empathy, our MC would drop a cold comment and keep running without even looking back. To the guide's nightmare, when he finally caught up with the brute, he only received a death glare. With his legs trembling, the old man is sure he only survived because he had no choice and ran dozens of miles every single day. Unable to feel his feet, he concludes that he would have collapsed and met his end from exhaustion if he kept up that crazy pace. That was exactly why the idea of escaping seemed like the only plausible way out. Under the cold moonlight, the poor guy continues his lonely escape through the forest. Overjoyed, he celebrates his luck for having left the camp in the dark without a trace. Out of nowhere, a pang in his chest hits him as he remembers his own luggage left behind. Heartbroken, the man laments leaving the backpack that was worth a small fortune and was his life's work. Breaking into a cold sweat, he gives up on going back, justifying that nothing is worth more than his own skin. Completely lost in the dark, the merchant has no idea which direction he took or where he's going. Taking a deep breath, the old man tries to calm down, focusing only on his precious, newly won freedom. But the tranquility is short-lived when a deep, dark voice echoes from right behind him. Trembling from head to toe, the poor guy freezes upon recognizing the impossible voice of his nightmare. Emerging from the darkness, our warrior approaches with heavy steps, demanding an explanation for the nighttime escape. With his gaze locked on the traitor's soul, the barbarian ironically asks if he didn't want to receive his promised payment. Stammering in pure terror, the merchant tries to make a lame excuse, without success. Without a second thought, he throws himself to his knees on the ground, begging for forgiveness for committing a mortal sin by running away. Desperate, the man bows his head, crying for having forgotten the grace of having his life spared. Unlike what he expected, our MC doesn't beat him up but crosses his arms, demanding only the reason for his escape. Coldly, the big guy argues that if he doesn't fix the reason for the betrayal, the old man will just end up running away again. Confused by the peaceful approach, the old man finally opens up about the root of his problem. With a trembling voice, he confesses that the marching pace was too fast for him to keep up. Whimpering, the man states that he'd rather risk escaping than meet his end from exhaustion in the middle of the road. In absolute silence, the barbarian processes the pathetic explanation without showing any emotion. To the old man's total shock, the warrior turns his back and simply tells them to go back to the camp. Changing his tune, the brute says he'll walk a little slower from now on. Relieved by the news, the old man sighs deeply as the big guy walks at a calmer pace. Confused by the sudden change, the merchant wonders what made the guy change his mind out of nowhere. A short time later, the duo returns to the camp where the fire is still burning hot. Exhausted from the pointless run, the guide collapses to the ground with no strength to do anything else. Whimpering in his ear, he begs for mercy, swearing he will never run away again. On the other side of the fire, the warrior just stares at the flames in complete silence. In his thoughts, he admits that this frantic pace was just a blasted habit from his first life. Back then, the demon realm was an inferno where even a second of rest meant your end. Without food or water, the only way to survive was to drink rotten blood and run nonstop to the next fight. But looking around, the MC concludes that the current situation is completely different from that old nightmare. Now he has real food, and doesn't need to push his body to the brink of madness just to stay alive. Assessing the situation, he decides to ask the merchant some tactical questions about the Empire's defenses. Eager to be useful, the old man agrees immediately and makes himself available to answer anything. Wasting no time, the tank tells him to start explaining the region's map in detail. In his mind, the warrior knows he has the continent's map memorized, but that information is already 300 years out of date. As they walk along the trail, the guide reports that the region's paladins are obsessed with capturing pagans and taking out demons. Thoughtfully, the big guy finally understands why he hasn't run into any monsters on the roads so far. Looking at his leather canteen, he notices his blood reserve is about to become useless. The sun sets, and the duo continues walking under the silvery light of the moon. Suddenly, the merchant's eyes widen, and he points excitedly at something hidden in the forest. Just below the hill, a small village surrounded by a wooden palisade emerges in the darkness. Grinning from ear to ear, the old man suggests they can get shelter and real food there. But our MC's sharp eyes notice something very wrong with that place. Narrowing his vision, he realizes there isn't a single light on in the houses or on the streets. In a cold tone, the barbarian warns that the village gates are wide open with no guards in sight. Scared, the guide asks if the place was abandoned, but the warrior finds that hard to believe without a closer look. Fearing the worst, the old man deduces that a monster attacked, and everyone fled to save their own skin. Out of nowhere, a sinister hissing echoes from the empty village streets. Drawing his rusty sword, our guy confirms the theory that there's something dangerous inside. Under the starlight, the big guy unsheathes the iron weapon with a smile on his face. Unlike the terrified merchant, the barbarian thinks finding a fight is great news. Step by step, he heads down the slope and into the ghost town, ready to spill some blood. Trembling with fear behind the warrior, the guide whispers, asking what the heck happened to the people there. Next to a house, the duo stops in front of a half-open door. With a serious expression, our hero focuses all his hearing on the inside of the shack. Kneeling in terror, the old man asks why they stopped so suddenly. Looking closer, the barbarian notices a pool of blood seeping out from under the dark door. Without warning, a hideous footsteps in the pool, staining the floor red. Immediately, a bizarre monster with gray skin and sharp teeth leaps from the darkness, screaming like a maniac. The beast's red eyes glow with pure bloodlust. But before the creature can finish its roar, the warrior's sword cuts through the air. In the blink of an eye, the blade severs one of the creature's arms at the shoulder. The impact sends the monster flying, splattering blood on the walls as the merchant screams in panic. On the floor, the creature's greenish hand falls lifelessly and stops moving. Out of nowhere, dozens of other bizarre little monsters emerge from the shadows, armed with cleavers and pieces of wood. Not understanding the creature's fury, the merchant stammers that goblins are usually timid and always run from humans. With a confident smile, the warrior concludes that they're in the right place to secure tonight's dinner. One of the chubbier goblins charges forward, screaming and raising a club to smash the barbarian's head. Quick as lightning, the tank blocks the blow using the flat of his rusty blade. Surprised by the human's strength, the little monster takes a step back. Sliding his sword through the air, our guy goes on the offensive, giving no chance for defense. Another goblin tries to flank, screaming loudly to get his attention, but the blade spins, cutting both creatures in half in a single, perfect move. The weight of the attack makes the sword slice through flesh like butter. Black blood splatters everywhere as the barbarian advances through the horde. Yet another small green fiend raises its cleaver, ready to plunge it into the warrior's back. Twisting his body, the big guy thrusts his sword straight into the creature's gut. In a violent jerk, the blade pierces through the creature's body and exits through its back, sending blood gushing onto the ground. Whimpering in pain, the goblin grabs the cold steel with its bare hands before finally fading away forever. Tearing through the night's silence, another goblin lets out a hideous scream as it's split in two by the barbarian's brutal sword. Black blood drips from the blade as the last body falls heavily onto the dirt floor. With his heart racing, the merchant peeks over the giant's shoulder, asking if all the monsters have finally kicked the bucket. Without letting his guard down, the warrior warns him not to be so sure the fight is over. Immediately, a sharp, sinister hiss echoes from right behind the guide, making his blood run cold. From the shadows of a dark alley, a huge, greenish hand grabs the edge of the wooden wall. Muttering and drooling, a giant, deformed goblin steps out into the middle of the street, clutching something to its chest. Crying desperately, the merchant realizes the monster is holding a little human girl by the neck. Furious to see his minions dead on the ground, the creature lets out a roar capable of bursting the eardrums of anyone nearby. Without wasting a millisecond, our tank hurls his blood-stained sword straight at the beast. Flying like a guided missile, the rusty blade cuts through the air at an absurd speed. With a sickening sound of tearing flesh, the steel sinks right into the giant goblin's forehead, paralyzing the creature on the spot. The colossal impact throws the monster backward, and it collapses hard on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust and dirt. Worried about the hostage, the old man whispers, asking what will happen if the little girl doesn't survive the attack. Cold and objective, the big guy says that's her problem and walks over to the fallen body to pull out a handful of dirty hair. With the situation under control, the barbarian tries to get the scared little girl's attention. Awkwardly, he tries to sound friendly, saying he needs to ask a few questions. But before the big guy can scare the child for good, the merchant jumps in front, waving a little cloth doll to calm the situation. Smiling, the old man offers a piece of licorice candy and assures her they're the good guys. Impressed by the guide's skill, our tank just watches the scene with a stern look. Explaining his knack, the merchant says he has a son exactly that age back home. Chewing on the candy, the girl finally relaxes a bit and whispers the word, "Mum." Immediately, the old man confirms that they will help her find her family. But sadness returns to the child's face when she confesses she was abandoned by her own parents. Shocked by the revelation, the two of them freeze, trying to understand what the girl just said. The warrior furrows his brow, processing the cruelty of the situation, and realizes the parents tied up their own daughter on purpose. Out of nowhere, a woman screams the girl's name in the middle of the empty street. With a torch in hand, the mother runs desperately while her husband tries to hold her back, warning her about the monsters. Crying buckets, the woman hugs the little girl, completely ignoring the monster corpses on the ground. Kneeling on the ground, she thanks the gods for the miracle of her daughter still being alive. Surrounded by dozens of villagers armed with torches, the atmosphere in the village starts to get tense. One of the peasants points to the mangled bodies and asks in shock if it was the traveler who took out all those monsters. Pulling the sword embedded in the big monster's skull, our MC coldly replies that it was his weapon that did the job. Ignoring the locals' dumbfounded faces, the warrior focuses on the real problem and demands to know why they tried to use a child as a sacrifice. More than that, he wants to understand why the heck they sacrificed the girl to a blasted demon. Ashamed, the village leader explains that the ancient forest was infested with goblins. To survive, they burned the woods and built the new village there, but the peace was short-lived. Furious and homeless, the little monsters began to attack the village non-stop, causing casualties every day. In an act of desperation, the men gathered and went to the cave to exterminate the threat for good. But upon arriving, they came face to face with a real demon that made everyone's blood run cold. With no strength to face the beast or withstand the nightly goblin attacks, the entire village surrendered. In exchange for protection, the creature demanded a gruesome deal, warning that it would come down to the village every week. The fiend's demand was clear: each house had to offer its most useless child as a sacrifice. Furious, the merchant yells, calling the villagers crazy cowards for handing over 10-year-old children to their doom. Desperate, the peasant shouts back, justifying that they couldn't give up their grown children who worked the fields, nor could they abandon their lands, or they would starve. With no patience for the sob story, the warrior slams the hilt of his sword on the table, cutting the nonsense short. With a death glare, he focuses on the village leader and asks how many blasted horns that demon had. Stuttering in confusion, the man replies that the creature was bald and had no horns. Immediately our hero sighs, almost disappointed with the answer. Accepting the challenge, the tank grabs a heavy axe and tells the leader to show him the way to the beast's lair. Scared, the villager asks where exactly the brute wants to go at this hour of the night. Without hesitation, the guy answers that he's going straight to the creature's den and tells them to stop stalling. Fully focused, the big guy announces that he's going to hunt the red pest in its own nest. Outside, the merchant follows the MC, still confused about the question regarding the horns. Explaining demon logic, the barbarian says that the lack of horns means the creature is a low-class piece of trash with no special powers. Keeping up with the warrior, the guide agrees and tries to encourage the idea of going to finish off the easy monster. Shaking in his boots, the villager tries to make an excuse not to go along in the dark, but our MC takes a step forward with weapon in hand, demanding obedience. With pure bloodlust shining in his eyes, he warns that their destination is the blasted demon's cave. With no choice, the small expedition marches into the woods, led by the peasants' torches. Reaching the base of the mountain, the village leader apologizes in advance for not being able to pay for the help. Coldly, the barbarian cuts him off, saying he's doing the job because he wants to, not for money. Surprised by his attitude, the villager at least offers a better weapon as thanks. Taking the heavy woodsman's axe from the peasant's hands, our hero accepts the gift without ceremony. Stopping before a dark crevice, the man says the creature is deep inside that disgusting cave. Behind them, the group of villagers huddles together, terrified just to be near the lair. In complete silence, the tank stares into the darkness of the entrance, preparing his mind for the carnage. Shamelessly, the village leader stammers that the group is heading back home, so as not to leave the village unprotected. Indignant, the merchant curses their cowardice for coming all this way just to point at a hole. Cutting off the shouting, The brute says he'd rather have the cowards far from the battle, and tells the old man to hold the torch. Surprised, the old guy realizes he'll have to enter that gruesome place with the monster slayer. Paying no mind to the guide's complaints, the warrior enters the cave, axe in hand. Whimpering in the dark, the merchant asks why the MC didn't give a piece of his mind to those disgusting villagers who sacrificed their daughters. Turning only his head, the guy asks if the old man has ever come face to face with a real demon. Stuttering, the man admits he's only seen dried carcasses on the black market. Explaining the harsh reality, the barbarian says that when an ordinary human looks a demon straight in the eye, everything changes. Faced with such an abomination, the brain freezes, courage vanishes, and all that's left is the pure desperation to survive at any cost. Even hearing this, the old man finds it absurd that they handed over their own children as monster chow. Coldly, the warrior argues that sometimes people are forced to eat crap to survive in a rotten world. Without letting his human side die, the merchant swears that for those abandoned children, the whole world turned its back, and no excuse can erase that. Ticked off by the situation, the guide vents that a life saved by throwing away your own humanity is meaningless. Right behind him, the old man notices the warrior has frozen in place and hasn't answered. In the shadows of the cave, the brute questions his own actions, comparing his distorted morals with the simple merchant's common sense. Frightened by the heavy silence, the man stammers, asking if he said something wrong, and tries to change the subject by asking if the children are still alive. With his head down, our hero remains silent, giving no certainty about the sacrifice's fate. After a sigh, he says that if the monster were dumb, the kids would have been done for a long time ago. Not understanding the logic, the merchant thinks that cruelty is what takes out victims faster. Before the MC can explain, a dull thud echoes from deep within the cave. Smelling his own end, the big guy takes a breath, his face contorting with pure fury. With a scream of horror, the merchant leaps back, clutching the torch as two red lights glow in the deep darkness. Wasting no time, the warrior swings the axe with all his might, cutting the air in a perfect arc. Hearing the impact, the barbarian turns his head, surprised by what he just hit. In the dim light of the cave, a small body falls heavily onto the wet stone. Stuttering and breathless, a goblin appears in the shadows, holding a wooden club. Behind it, dozens of red eyes glow in the dark, revealing an entire horde of little monsters. Screaming like madmen, the goblins charge at the MC with makeshift weapons. With a quick leap, the big guy dodges the first attack, planting his boot on the stone. Twisting his body in mid-air, he brings the sword down, cutting the monster from top to bottom. Without pausing, the tank grabs another goblin by the neck, crushing the creature's windpipe with one hand. In a pure display of strength, he throws the creature against the cave wall, shattering its bones. Black blood stains the stone as the merchant screams in terror, begging them not to let the torch go out. Out of nowhere, a faint light glows on the dark ceiling, catching the warrior's attention. With cat-like reflexes, the barbarian senses the danger and realizes he can't swing his sword in this tight space. From the shadows of the ceiling, sharp stalactites drip water right above the goblins. Sheathing his stained sword, our hero decides to switch tactics to hand-to-hand combat. Roaring like animals, the goblins surround the warrior from all sides. Cutting through the wind, the axe comes down in a clean, deadly blow. Straight to the head, the blade sinks into one of the creature's skulls, splitting the bone in half. In a brutal sequence, the MC uses both weapons, tearing the horde apart in a sea of black blood. Looking at the piled-up bodies, he coldly notes that he's going to have to use the axe a lot to clean up all this trash. Without mercy, the heavy blade sinks into another little monster's shoulder, finishing the scumbag on the spot. The impact splatters blood on the barbarian's face as he relentlessly advances, taking out everything in his path. One after another, the goblins fall with severed limbs and crushed heads. Pieces of green monsters cover the slippery stone floor. Trembling while holding the torch, the merchant watches the massacre in shock, muttering that the big guy wiped out an army by himself. Behind the horde, the last survivors let out shrill screams of panic and turn to flee. With their short legs pumping fast, the little monsters flee into the depths of the lair. Analyzing the escape, the warrior concludes that with half the pack gone, they definitely ran to get help from the boss. Just ahead, the narrow tunnel opens up, revealing a more spacious area in the cave. Cautiously, the duo advances through the darkness, guided only by the trembling light of the fire. Walking through the battle's wreckage, the warrior notices fresh excavation marks on the stone walls. To the merchant, it all seemed bigger than before, suggesting this place could be the monster's main base. Sniffing the heavy cave air, the tank furrows his brow, smelling a familiar rotten scent. Quickly, he tells the old man to stay alert, because the blasted demon is right up ahead. The order is clear, and the warning is not to run under any circumstances, or the goblins will swarm them. With a focused gaze, the guy catches a subtle movement in the deep shadows of the tunnel. Like a red bolt of lightning, a giant claw cuts through the air, aiming straight for the hero's neck. Quick on the draw, the big guy crosses his sword and axe, defending against the brutal blow just in time. The clash of weapons sends sparks flying everywhere, illuminating the monster's face as the old man screams desperately. In a guttural tone, the demon smiles and comments that it has never seen a human like the MC before. With a disgusting laugh, the creature confirms that the barbarian is definitely not from that village of useless folk. With narrowed eyes, the warrior doesn't back down an inch and faces the abomination head-on. Soon, his attention focuses on a bizarre detail glowing on the big monster's red forehead. Wiping the blood from his cheek, the tank observes the small, pointed bump emerging from the creature's head. With his sword ready for the kill, our hero faces the demon as it prepares to attack again. In our guy's head, it quickly clicks, confirming that the growing horn means the pest is evolving to a mid-tier level. Laughing at the barbarian's grim face, the monster mocks, saying it loves seeing that look of terror on humans. In a deadly lunge, the creature advances, tearing through the wind with its sharp claws ready to rip and tear. With pure instinct, the tank's eyes widen, predicting the attack's lethal trajectory. An explosion of force erupts in the center of the cave as the axe meets the beast's claw again. During the clash, the red fiend confesses that it prefers humans because they are weak and obey any order without a peep. Breaking into a cold sweat, the warrior mentally admits that the creature's speed almost fooled his eyes and that the block was pure luck. Feeling the weight of the blow, the hero is thrown back several feet, confirming the insane strength of that mid-tier foe. Annoyed by its losses, the demon's face darkens, and it curses the big guy for taking out so many of its useless goblins. In his thoughts, the barbarian knows that an average team could handle a low-tier demon, but a mid-rank creature could wipe out an entire elite troop. With an air of superiority, the creature points a blood-stained finger, giving the arrogant human one last chance. The bizarre order is that the guy is not to use the arm holding the axe. To make matters worse, the beast tells him to cut off his own arm and chew it down to the bone if he wants to get out of there alive. Motionless, the warrior calculates the risks, knowing it's almost impossible to beat a mid-rank foe with his nerfed stats. Bellowing with rage, the demon demands to know why the miserable human hasn't started mutilating himself yet. With no patience for the rant, the barbarian sinks his sword into the stone floor, ignoring the threat. In a tone of pure contempt, our MC pops the cork of his leather canteen and says he doesn't take orders from a walking blood bag. Tilting the flask, he pours the black, viscous liquid straight into his mouth. Sniffing the air, the big monster freezes, catching that strong smell of rotten demonic blood. Stuttering in shock, the fiend wonders why the heck a disgusting human is drinking that stuff. Empty, the leather canteen hits the floor, rolling across the cold cave stone. With his back to the demon, the big guy's body begins to tremble violently. With an animalistic roar, the barbarian's veins pop in his neck as the pain and fury of his special ability take over. Horrified by the scene, the red beast takes a step back, not believing what it's seeing. Turning his head slowly, the hero's eyes glow with an insane red, exuding pure bloodlust. In his mind, the MC is thankful that the old blood still had an effect, activating his Berserker mode. Completely shocked, the monster feels a chill and wonders if this is fear of a mere mortal. In an attempt to hide its terror, the creature screams, threatening to take out the human on the spot. In a desperate leap, the demon attacks with claws out, focused on eliminating the danger before it's too late. With a macabre smile on his face, the warrior realizes that the blasted new horn is making the creature dumb and overconfident. Sliding under the attack, the monster's claw only cuts through the wind. With his blood boiling, the warrior smiles, saying that now he can read the creature's every move clearly. Giving no opening, the axe comes down hard, tearing through the beast's chest in a gush of blood. Roaring in pain, the red demon instinctively recoils after taking the first hit. Coldly, the barbarian analyzes the situation and notices the axe's blade is chipped. His deduction is that 2 more hits of that level, and the woodsman's weapon will turn to dust. Furious with the counterattack, the big monster shows its teeth, ready to retaliate. Screaming that this is unforgivable, the creature vows to take out the human at any cost. In a precise leap, the fiend retreats, gaining distance to set up a new pounce. Quickly, our hero draws his old sword, preparing for whatever comes his way. Out of nowhere, the stone floor trembles as the demon gathers momentum to attack again. At an absurd speed, the abomination advances, flying straight at the warrior. Planting his feet on the ground, the big guy crosses his sword to brace for the brutal impact. Impressed by the force of the blow, the MC grinds his teeth, feeling the pressure of the mid-rank monster. Using his own body weight, the tank throws the creature back, breaking its charge and opening the enemy's guard. In the midst of the chaos, the old sword's blade simply can't handle the pressure and shatters into pieces. Certain of victory, the big monster flies in with claws out to shred the unarmed human. Feeling the wind of the attack, the barbarian admits that the destructive power of this red pest is truly a nightmare. Screaming like a madman, the fiend advances, thirsty for blood, ignoring any defense. By a hair's breadth, the warrior spins his body, and the giant claw only tears the skin of his shoulder. Dodging at the very last second, our guy takes a step back to avoid being impaled alive. Without giving him a break, the beast attacks frantically, unleashing a sequence of blows. Dancing between the attacks, the big guy dodges with millimeter precision, feeling his end graze by. When the claw passes an inch from his neck, he sees the perfect opening to counter-attack. With a quick spin, the tank executes a violent leg sweep, knocking the demon hard onto the stone floor. In pure desperation, the creature bellows, surprised by the human's trip. In the blink of an eye, the creature bounces off the floor and retreats, taking a huge leap back. Seizing the chance, the barbarian throws the broken axe like a missile straight at the enemy. Hitting the wall, the wooden weapon shatters without hitting the slippery beast. Absolutely furious, the demon faces the human, questioning where so much strength and reflexes come from. Staring at the beast with bloodshot eyes, the warrior maintains a maniacal grin on his face. With blood running down his chest, our MC exudes a purely murderous aura. Frightened by his confidence, the fiend is sure the guy isn't human but a monster in disguise. Roaring with anger, the abomination scrapes its claws on the floor, vowing to rip the scumbag's head off. In an absurd leap, the red creature clings to the cave wall like a giant insect. Hanging from the ceiling, the demon tries to come up with a strategy, realizing that in close combat, the enemy has the full advantage. Trapped by fear and tension, the merchant shouts from the entrance, telling the scumbags to stop fighting. Stuttering, he says he's not getting any closer and that the torch's fire is burning his hand. With the goblins retreating behind him, the old man gets desperate, trying to keep the light on amidst the chaos. Soon the old torch crackles and begins to lose its strength, illuminating the cave less. Seeing the light fail, the demon smiles and discovers the weak point of the whole situation. In an acrobatic leap, the creature drops from the ceiling, focusing on a completely different target. Unarmed, the warrior follows the movement with his eyes, grabbing only the broken axe handle from the floor. Wisely, he notices immediately that the red pest is ignoring the fight to attack the cowardly merchant. With pure bloodlust, he warns that things won't go the way the fiend wants and prepares the final throw. Scaling the cave wall, the demon focuses on putting out the blasted torch to attack in the dark. Watching the creature fly around like a headless chicken, the warrior praises its annoying agility. Aware that a direct shot won't work, he changes his strategy and aims for a fixed point. Gripping the axe handle with superhuman strength, the muscles in his arm bulge to their limit. Without hesitation, the big guy says he's going to destroy the blasted ceiling the beast is using for support. With a roar of effort, he hurls the iron straight at the stalactites hanging above the monster. Caught by surprise, the red creature looks up, not understanding the target of the attack. Cutting through the air, the broken axe head flies as heavy as a stone. The impact shatters the cave ceiling with a colossal boom, bringing down a shower of sharp rocks. Frightened, the merchant's eyes widen as dust and stones fall on the demon's head. Hit head-on, the fiend plummets face first to the ground, losing all control. With a dull thud, the red carcass hits the hard earth, kicking up more dust in the lair. From the dusty shadows, the tip of a rusty sword scrapes the ground, marking the beginning of the end. Blinded by dust and pain, the abomination tries to rub its eyes to see the enemy again, but the barbarian's heavy boots plant themselves on the ground right in front of it, sealing its fate right there. In a violent charge, the warrior advances with the hilt of the old sword, ready to impale the beast. Straight and true, the rusty blade sinks into the demon's eye, which bellows in pure agony. Writhing on the ground, the creature cries out in pain, grabbing the blade with its bloody claws. Laughing at the enemy's ugliness, our tank taunts that the creature looks even cuter with that hole in its face. Screaming promises of a painful end, the abomination desperately tries to pull the weapon from its own eye. Annoyed by its resistance, the big guy wonders how the pest isn't gone yet, even with a piece of iron in its brain. Twisting the sword hilt, the barbarian shoves the blade in even deeper, calling the monster an annoying worm. In extreme pain, the red beast tries to retreat, begging the miserable human to stop the torture. In a display of pure strength, the hero lifts the demon by the sword hilt, breaking the creature's structure. With tense muscles, he hurls the impaled body straight against the cave wall, shattering the stone. Trembling with rage, the monster grinds its teeth, drooling black blood amidst the rubble. In a final mercy blow, the guy drives the blade deep, and the fiend's eye explodes, putting the creature out of its misery for good. Taking a deep breath, the blood in the warrior's eyes begins to fade, signaling the end of the ability. Relieved, he grumbles that he was lucky the rotten blood lasted long enough so he didn't have to fight a mid-rank foe on empty. But before he can relax, the brute's ears pick up a slithering hiss coming straight from the shadows. Shaking like a leaf, the last remaining goblins watch their own master get annihilated in seconds. Narrowing his eyes, the warrior realizes that without the demon around, the smaller monsters completely lose their nerve. Gripping the blood-stained axe firmly, the guy prepares to finish the job. In a single motion, the blade cuts through the air, decapitating the 3 goblins at once. Dirty from head to toe, our MC warns that he's going to take out every last creature in that cave before he leaves. Screaming in panic, a chubby goblin drops its club and turns to run. Placing a hand on the creature's head, the brute yanks the little monster off the ground as if it were a feather. Without a shred of mercy, the axe comes down hard, crushing the creature's skull in an instant. With clenched teeth, the barbarian swears that cowards who flee from a fight don't deserve to live. On the other side of the cave, the sound of fast footsteps catches the hero's attention. Pointing his sharp sword, the warrior locates the last target fleeing with the torch in hand. Thirsty for blood, he focuses on the yellow light, ready for the final pounce. But before the attack, the merchant screams at the top of his lungs, calling the guy sir. Caught by surprise, the hero freezes in place with the sword inches from the old man's face. In a cold sweat, the old man trembles, holding the torch with the blade glued to his nose. After a second of shock, the warrior slowly lowers his sword. Trembling from head to toe, the old man takes a deep breath, mentally thankful he wasn't turned into merchant mince. With an empty gaze, the barbarian just stares at the makeshift fire in silence. Frightened by the guy's expression, the guide stammers, asking if he's okay after that insane battle. Cutting him off, the tank apologizes for the near accident and deduces that the kids are hidden deep in the cave. Nodding his head, the old man confirms the order to finish the cleanup and rescue the kids. Soon, the duo ventures deeper into the darkness, illuminated only by the faint light of the torch. The next morning, the group finally emerges from the gruesome hole, escorting the children to safety. At the village entrance, desperate mothers hug their children, crying with relief and thanking the mysterious mercenary. In a corner, the merchant offers a hot stew and asks if the big guy isn't going to join the party. Distant from the celebration, the warrior watches a mother comforting her traumatized children. Curious about the bizarre package on the MC's back, the old man points to the disgusting carcass and asks what it is. Gently, the peasant offers hearty food to satisfy the group's hunger after a sleepless night. But our hero abruptly turns his back, leaving the plate aside. In the middle of the crowd, the terrified gaze of one of the rescued children catches the barbarian's attention. In total shock, the merchant freezes upon hearing what the rescued child began to mutter. With wide eyes, the old man doesn't understand what kind of madness is coming out of that kid's mouth. Repeating dark words nonstop, the child speaks of valleys full of bones and birds that steal the light of hope. Coldly, the barbarian explains that the little ones were mercilessly brainwashed from the first minute in captivity. Shaking like a leaf, the little boy continues the macabre mantra, completely oblivious to his mother's hug. Wailing, the kid repeats that he is the most useless child in the whole blasted world. Feeling the weight of that truth, the warrior says that not even a holy priest could withstand the force of this brainwashing. Even worse, the MC concludes that the worst torture was the cruel truth of being abandoned by their own parents. Outraged by the situation, the merchant yells, asking why a demon would commit such an atrocity against innocents. With a grim face, the tank states that this is exactly the disgusting essence of a real demon. Shocked by the coldness, the old man finally understands the level of evil they were facing. It finally clicks, revealing why that creature had kept the kids alive all this time. Desperate, the old man cries, begging to know if there's a way to reverse the children's mental state if their parents show real love. In a dark tone, the warrior says it's not impossible to save a traumatized hostage's mind. However, the harsh reality hits when he raises the question of whether parents who abandoned their children would have the real strength to heal the scar they themselves caused. As they pass through the village gates, the merchant follows the hero hurriedly, carrying all the junk. Surprised, he notices that the giant didn't even want to enter the village to rest, and has already hit the road. Almost running, the old man questions if they can't stop for a little while, at least until the sun is fully up. Worried about the barbarian's condition, he points out that the wounds from the bizarre battle are still bleeding horribly. Without blinking, the big guy says there's no time to waste, and that taking out paladins isn't something the Empire usually ignores. Spitting out his own words, the old man panics, remembering he's become an accomplice to an offense against the Holy Army. Like a strategist, the tank calculates that the soldiers must already be sniffing their trail thanks to the prisoner witnesses. Cutting to the scene of the roadside massacre, the remains of the Imperial camp prove the warrior's theory is spot on. Amidst the rubble, the blonde paladin in shining armor glares at the air with a look of pure hatred and thirst for vengeance. Back at the village, the barbarian picks up the decapitated corpse of the red demon by its legs and draws his knife. In one clean cut, the blade slices the beast's neck, spraying the last drops of full blood. Holding the canteen, the MC fills the leather flask with the fresh essence of the mid-rank foe. Calculating his profit, he notes the bottle is half full but already guarantees an emergency berserker mode. Gushing the remains from the demonic head, the ugly body falls heavy and hollow in the dust. In a thin voice, the village leader tries to interrupt the barbarian, asking what he's going to do with that disgusting carcass. Shortened to the point, the hero tells him to set fire to that piece of junk before it rots. Confused, the village chief mutters, thinking that monster hunters sold these pests on the black market for a fortune. Using his head, the warrior mentally calculates that keeping the carcass would be a huge profit in the capital or the independent kingdoms. But with paladins on their tail, the extra weight would be suicide, and the rotten smell would be a beacon for the Imperial Guards. Scowling at the villager, the MC threatens that if they leave the blood there, more demons will catch the scent and attack the village tomorrow. Shaking in his boots, the leader stammers, promising to take care of the fire immediately to avoid another bloodbath. Dragging the broken horned carcass, the peasants take the red pest to the nearest bonfire. Out of nowhere, the chief's wife calls the mercenary in a small voice, holding 2 leather packages in her hands. Humbly, she offers new, reinforced leather boots as a small token of gratitude for saving the traumatized children. Analyzing the material, the guy admits the gift is a huge help and decides to accept it. Putting on the new pair, the warrior stumps his feet on the ground, feeling the perfect, firm fit of the boots. With his gear swapped out, the leader of the duo turns his back and says, "It's past time to get out of there." But with the first step, the bandages on his chest pull tight, causing a sharp jolt of pain. Nearly falling to his knees, the barbarian groans softly, clutching the nasty wound made by the young paladin. Frustrated with the limitation, he grumbles that the mid-rank blood regenerated deep cuts in the blink of an eye, but that magical mark just won't close. Looking at the scar, the guy grumbles that the blasted spear was no ordinary weapon. Back at the scene of the crime, the crows have already begun their feast on the annoying paladin's corpse. Stepping onto the battlefield, the blonde knight swishes her cape, annoyed. Behind her, a soldier reports that they've searched every nook and cranny of the region and found nothing useful. Hissing with rage, the woman tells the guy to stop staring into space and use his brain. According to her analysis, the killer didn't want to rob anyone, since the equipment and supplies are still all scattered on the ground. Yelling at the rookie, the blonde paladin demands to know what kind of sick cult would commit such a slaughter and also take a monster's corpse as a souvenir. Losing her cool, she humiliates the recruit, saying he's still stuck in a useless position because he can't even think. Shaking in his boots, the soldier thinks his boss is a shrew but doesn't have the guts to talk back to the arch-paladin. Famous throughout the entire empire, Helia isn't just some fancy pants with a title, but a monster who slaughtered 20 demons on her own to rank up. Known for having a trashy personality, the youngest paladin in the army has skills you can't ignore. Stuttering and breathless, the recruit realizes that talking back to his boss would be signing his own walking papers. With a heavy sigh, the blonde decides they'll have to use Plan B to solve the mystery. With an icy glare, she orders the soldier to bring the archbishop's holy relic immediately. Completely shocked, the recruit stammers, begging his boss to reconsider, remembering that the last time it was used, it almost ended in a colossal mess. In a panic, the soldier swears that breaking the twin mirrors would be an irreplaceable tragedy for the Empire. Cutting off the tantrum, the blonde curses her subordinate, saying the relic was given precisely to be used if the investigation stalled. Cynically, she asks if the useless fool would rather return empty-handed and tell the archbishop his nephew became crow food. With his tail between his legs, the recruit opens the box and hands over the mirror-shaped relic. Kneeling on the stained ground, the paladin positions the magical artifact directly in the remaining pool of blood. Immediately, the mirror's stone glows brightly with a blinding white light. Tearing through the sky, the beam of light rises and projects a giant panel right in the middle of the road. In the ghostly image, the barbarian appears, gigantic, drinking monster blood like a madman and sweeping through the guards like trash. Covered in black blood, the warrior's insane face scares even the most experienced troops. As the recording ends, the relic's glass simply cracks from end to end. Shaking like a leaf, the soldier sees the mirror crack and warns that the thing really broke. Her eyes widening, the blonde realizes the legend was real. The artifact only breaks when it reflects a supreme demon. Terrified, the recruit suggests they run back to the capital to warn that a class monster is on the loose. Smiling with pure sarcasm, the woman questions the logic of running away, just when they've found the killer's face. Her face hardening, she orders the troop to continue the hunt as if nothing happened. Tapping the hilt of her holy sword on her palm, the arch-paladin smiles with a thirst for blood. Exuding divine fury, the woman promises to hunt the monster disguised as a human to the ends of the earth. Focused on revenge, Helia vows to cut off the killer's head with her own hands. Far away, the unlikely duo walks through the forest as night begins to fall. Perched on the warrior's shoulder, the merchant sighs, saying he feels sorry for those traumatized kids from the village. Adjusting himself on the giant, the old man shakes his head, trying to banish the bad thoughts. The old man deduces that if the kids want to have a normal life again, their parents will have to swallow their fear and show some real love. With a dull thud, the barbarian collapses to his knees on the ground, dropping all his gear. Startled, the merchant falls from the giant's shoulder, not understanding what happened. With his heart in his throat, the old man tries to get up, but shock takes over when he sees his companion's state. Kneeling and panting, the warrior trembles in pain, breaking out in a cold sweat. In a panic, the guide yells, asking how a monster that tears demons in half can just drop out of nowhere. Looking closer, the chest wound has opened up completely, gushing blood onto the grass. Sucking in a breath, our MC curses his own stupidity for not seeing the trap sooner. Feeling the magic burn in his veins, he realizes that the rookie's spear was enchanted with a fatal blessing meant to take out monsters. In his head, an attack focused on demons shouldn't do this much damage to a human body. However, the bizarre detail is that drinking gallons of rotten blood and activating his aura has partially changed his very essence. Stuttering, the merchant advises the big guy to rest and stop pretending to be immortal. Paying no mind, the barbarian cuts him off and demands to know what phase the moon was in last night. Confused, the old man answers that the moon was waning, almost gone. Immediately, a sinister howl echoes from the shadows of the dense forest. From the bushes, dozens of yellow eyes begin to glow in the dark, confirming the worst. Stomping hard on the ground, the first creature emerges from the trees, showing its claws. Drooling with hunger, a pack of black wolves surrounds the two travelers in the blink of an eye. Sighing warily, the warrior focuses his blurry vision, trying not to pass out. Without ceremony, he slowly gets up and pulls both weapons into his hands, ready for the slaughter. With a failing voice, our hero tells the old man to back off if he doesn't want to become dog food. Trembling with rage at his own weakness, he swears this cursed world won't give him even 10 minutes of peace. With sword and axe at the ready, he curses the mutts for showing up at the worst possible time. With an ironic sigh, the warrior mocks that the pack could have waited for him to heal, before demanding a toll. Baring its huge fangs, the lead wolf scrapes its paws on the ground, marking its territory. Sweating bullets, the warrior takes a deep breath, trying to focus on the blurry target. Far from 100%, the brute prepares to face dozens of beasts on pure rage alone. With a violent snarl, the first beast leaps straight for the hero's neck. On pure reflex, the heavy axe blade comes down, cutting the air in a lethal spin. The impact sends the mutant dog flying, embedding the axe straight into the pest's skull. With no time to think, the entire pack attacks at once, forming a mountain of teeth and claws. Annoyed with his own body, the barbarian mutters that aiming for the forehead has become a problem because he's seeing double. Soon, two wolves latch onto the warrior's arms, tearing his skin with their canines. Like a battle tank, he ignores the bite and brings his sword straight down the middle of the wolf on the left. Using brute force, he kicks the beast on the right, crushing its face with his boot. With blood everywhere, the sword sinks into the next dog's belly, tearing through to its spine. Twisting his wrist, the blade cuts another wolf from the bottom up, disemboweling the little monster on the spot. Grinding his teeth in pure pain, he holds back a scream as another beast bites his calf. Completely covered in wounds and surrounded by carcasses, the warrior continues to grind the pack down with his axe in blind fury. Taking a glancing blow, our MC grits his teeth to endure the pain. But without wasting time, he grabs the wolf's neck with pure brute force. The creature then bites down hard on his arm. Clicking his tongue with contempt, the guy isn't intimidated, and in one swift motion, he snaps the monster's neck on the spot. Taking a deep breath, he stares at the pile of bodies on the ground, but more wolves appear, snarling and surrounding the area. Analyzing the situation, our MC realizes they hunt in packs and are closing in. Suddenly, a cry for help gets his attention. In the back, the cowardly servant tries to fend off the beasts using 2 torches. Knowing there's no way out, the guy pulls out a sinister flask, thinking this is like drinking poison. Meanwhile, the wolves begin to corner the helper. Without a second thought, our hero chugs the mysterious liquid in one go. He then throws the empty bottle to the ground with force, and a wicked red ore explodes from his body. Charging forward, the wolves attack with everything they've got. With his eyes glowing red, the MC focuses on his target. Advancing at an insane speed, he tears through the wind, and he arrives just in time to slice through the beasts that were about to pounce on the servant, dicing the beasts as if they were paper in a single blow. Seeing the scene, the helper's jaw drops. Blood splatters everywhere as the sword does its dirty work. Tearing through the entire pack, our hero becomes a true meat grinder. Reflecting on the power, he notes that the blood berserker bonus changes depending on the demon. Letting out a war cry, the guy unleashes even more energy. Dodging the attacks, he moves too fast for the monsters. The system then alerts him that the agility bonus is activated. Remembering the demon he dispatched, he understands that the insane speed makes perfect sense. Realizing their disadvantage, the surviving wolves begin to retreat. All excited, the servant announces that the pack is fleeing. Sensing a strange vibe, the MC gets that the trouble isn't over yet. Suddenly, a giant paw stomps heavily on the ground. Planting his feet, the guy faces the new threat, and a colossal alpha wolf covered in scars appears, snarling. Desperate, the helper shouts that this beast is twice the size of the others. Cursing the situation, our hero realizes the buff is almost at its end. Even so, he charges forward on instinct. In a head-on clash, the sword meets the giant claws with a thunderous boom. Impressed by the impact, our MC feels the monster's crushing force. Being pushed back, his eyes widen, and he ends up spitting blood from the damage. Losing his strength, the guy falls to his knees on the ground. In a panic, the servant calls for his master, thinking this is the end. Begging him to react, the coward points to the approaching wolf. Gasping for air, our MC tries to stay conscious. Snarling right in their faces, the pack leader prepares to pounce. Looking at the sky, the guy wonders why the condition hasn't been met yet, until finally it clicks. With wide eyes, he feels the exact moment arriving. Exactly at midnight, the moon disappears completely. He drives the sword into the ground with all his might. Kneeling, he begins to recite an ancient chant to Atala, the Lord of Blades. Promising to quench its thirst for blood, he offers his own throat to the battle. Vowing to forge a name stained red upon that weapon, an insane golden light explodes from the ground, pushing the beast back. Confused, the big wolf retreats, not understanding anything. Nearly blinded by the light, the servant tries to shield his eyes. Enveloped in a pillar of fire, the MC prepares for the ritual. The system then asks what name he will give the sword. With a smirk, the guy remembers it's been a while since he witnessed this resonance. With blood in his eyes, he decrees the weapon's name will be Mosquito. Absorbing the word, the blade glows even brighter, and a wicked red mark appears on the metal. The system then confirms the unique trait of the one who forges names. Rising with the flaming sword, the MC is ready for round 2. Reinforcing the vow, the status screen asks for confirmation. Shouting with conviction, he repeats the name Mosquito without hesitation. Unleashing an absurd wave of power, the guy firms his stance. Validating the special ability, the notification glows again. Furious, the giant wolf roars and charges with everything it's got. Terrified, the servant lets out a scream of pure terror. In the blink of an eye, the sword cuts through the air and hits the monster. Gushing blood, the beast retreats, yelping in pain. Immediately, the life steal effect is activated by the system, healing his wounds instantly. The MC gives a sadistic smile, saying, "Now this is more like it." With a snarl of rage, the giant wolf faces its enemy. With a mocking smile, our MC warns that there's still a long way to go and calls the mutt for another round. Furious at the provocation, the monster advances, full of bloodlust. Without backing down an inch, the big guy brings the sword down with full force. In a brutal impact, the blade slices straight through the beast's head. The system then alerts that the hero's life has been restored thanks to the blow. Checking his own body, the guy notices the fatal spear wound has completely vanished. Surrounded by carcasses, he admits that those creatures ended up being a huge help. With his gaze fixed on the blade, the warrior reads the name Mosquito engraved on the ancient weapon. However, he notes that the sword's level is very low, and the healing isn't 100% efficient. With a sigh of relief, our MC decides that it's good enough for now. After all, getting a special effect without spending any materials is already a huge advantage. With the weapon sheathed, he remembers his past life where greed only brought trouble. Behind a tree, the cowardly servant peeks out and quietly asks if the fight is over. Shocked by the scene, the old man approaches, unable to believe the barbarian massacred the entire pack alone. Filled with surprise, the old man points to his master's chest, asking how the wounds disappeared. With a grim face, the hero ignores the question and asks why the guy didn't run. Caught red-handed, the helper gets the shock of his life. Straight to the point, the guy explains that if the old man had run, he wouldn't have been able to go after him because of his injuries. To cover his tracks, the old man confesses he would have become wolf food, but the brute deduces that the desire to flee is still there. Wringing his hands, the servant denies everything, lying that he was only worried about his boss. Cutting off the nonsense, the giant turns his back and says he's going to sleep, and the guide is on watch duty. With a dark look, the warrior threatens to rip out the old man's guts and make a rope out of them if he tries to escape. His whole body trembling, the coward lets out a scream of pure terror. Alone by the fire, the helper tries to stay awake in the middle of the dark night. Thoughtfully, the old man wonders if the threat was just a bad joke. As day breaks, the duo resumes their walk, and the guide calculates another 10 days to the Alliance's border. Focused on the objective, the hero comments that he'd rather not run into any paladins on the way. The old man then warns that the path has fewer guards, but is infested with bandits. Faced with his master's doubtful expression, the old man laughs, saying that thieves are no problem for a warrior of his level. With a finger on the paper, the guide shows a quick shortcut to the main road. After analyzing the route, the guy realizes the path leads straight to the eastern coastal city. In his memory, he recalls that 300 years ago, that place was a bloody battlefield. Back then, the local people were extremely aggressive and hated any outsiders. Even worse, the reception for a giant barbarian always ended in a nasty fight. The image of the mage Melissa then comes to mind, staring at him as if he were a disgusting insect. With a notebook in hand, the redhead jotted down every bizarre detail about that half-monster from the mountains. In a flash of anger, our MC dismisses that useless memory on the spot. Back in the present, the servant assures him that nowadays, the Alliance of Free Cities welcomes everyone with open arms. All excited, the old man talks too much and gets a chewing out from his boss for getting too comfortable. Suddenly, the duo stops upon noticing a strange gathering in the middle of the trail. From a distance, the giant asks his helper what the heck is going on up there. With a focused gaze, the old man observes their clothes and deduces they are bandits attacking innocent travelers. Practical and impatient, the hero decides to go around to avoid getting into pointless trouble. However, one of the bandits spots the duo and lets out a shout, drawing attention. With a click of his tongue, our guy grumbles, annoyed by his bad luck. With little choice, he places a firm hand on the hilt of his new sword. With heavy steps, the brute advances, ready to slice up the scumbags. Faced with the giant's psycho expression, the robbers are startled, and the hostages flee desperately. Facing the mountain of muscle, the leader of the thieves freezes for a second. Quickly, the criminal raises his hands in surrender. In a cowardly gesture, the bandit rubs his palms together to de-escalate the situation. Changing their tune, the criminals force a fake smile, pretending to be friends with the hero. Brazenly, the gang leader laughs and mocks the victims who ran away. Full of swagger, the bald man tells the cowards to spread the word that the raging horns of Aegon have arrived. With a look of pure boredom, our MC asks what kind of show this is. Cynical to the bone, the robber thanks the barbarian partner for being there to scare people. Without a shred of patience, the guy says he's not part of any gang and tells them to get out of his way. In total shock, the entire gang freezes in place after hearing the blunt reply. Utterly confused, the leader pulls his knife back, asking who the heck the giant is then. With his courage restored, the bandit shouts indignantly, calling the hero a meddling nobody. With extreme coldness, the warrior just stares at the shouting while the servant breaks into a cold sweat behind him. Surrounding the big guy, the gang demands to know how he's going to pay for the loss of their victims. Noticing the change in tone, our MC realizes their swagger returned due to their numerical advantage. Suddenly, the thieves' gaze crosses the road and focuses on the cowardly guide's giant backpack. With a finger pointed, the bald man orders the old man to come closer and hand over the valuable luggage. In a tactical move, the hero uses his own wide body as a shield, blocking the scumbag's view. Face to face with that steel chest, the criminals gulp on the spot. To maintain his pose, the leader grumbles that the barbarian messed up their score and now needs to pay a compensation fee. Without showing any reaction, the giant maintains an absolute and intimidating silence. Sensing the mood getting heavy, the gang leader changes tactics and proposes a different deal. With a clever smile, the bald man suggests the brute join their group, pretending to be an official member. Posing like fighters, the bandits explain that he just needs to shout and flex his muscles to command respect on the roads. According to the robber's logic, this easy gig clears his debt, and everyone comes out ahead. With a wicked smile, the guy asks if the bald man isn't a woman in disguise, because otherwise, he'd feel bad about laying a beat down. Amidst laughter, the bald man scoffs, asking if the giant is going to cry or if he's too scared to speak, since he's never even seen a barbarian and doesn't know if they're men or women. Terrified, the servant thinks his master would rather play it cool to avoid trouble with the gang. With a pat on the hero's chest, the bandit confirms the deal, calling the big guy friend. With a dark look, the warrior stares the scumbag up and down. Full of swagger, the robber asks for his new business partner's name to seal the deal. Without hesitation, our MC says he'll be happy to reveal his name and draws his sword from its sheath. In a lethal move, the blade crosses the air and slices the bald man's throat in the blink of an eye. With a dull thud, the leader's head rolls across the dirt, kicking up dust. In absolute shock, the other cronies freeze in place, not understanding what just happened. Panic soon takes over, and the criminals let out screams of pure terror. In tears, the gang yells that their leader, Horsel, kicked the bucket, while the cowardly guide just sighs, resigned to the carnage. Drawing knives and swords, the criminals threaten the giant, vowing he won't leave there alive. Standing firm as a mountain, the hero swings his bloody sword and introduces himself as Kadam. In an imposing tone, he declares himself the great warrior of the god Atala. Nearby, a butterfly lands peacefully on the handle of an axe stuck in a log. In a rough jerk, the warrior grabs the handle of the old axe. Without a shred of mercy, he sinks the iron blade straight into one of the bandits' skulls. Analyzing the damage, the big guy watches the blood drip from the makeshift weapon. Disappointed with the quality, he notices the blade is loose after using a work tool in heavy combat. Sticking the axe in his belt, our hero plans to get a decent weapon as soon as they reach the fortress. Nearby, a surviving crony shakes like a leaf in the face of the massacre. With his knife trembling in his hand, the criminal mutters the names of his dead partners, unable to believe what he's seeing. Step by step, the brute approaches the last scumbag with a cold stare. Overcome by terror, the thief drops his weapon and tries to run for his life. However, desperation gets the better of him, and the poor guy trips, falling face first into the dust. Stomping firmly on the fugitive's ankle, the warrior says this saves him the trouble of throwing the axe again. Screams of pain echo as the tank threatens to break the guy's spine if he doesn't answer his questions correctly. Straight to the point, the guy demands to know who they are, their connection to the runaways, and who these raging horns of Agon are. Lying on the ground, the bandit groans in agony as the servant cautiously approaches. To speed things up, The old man explains that Aegon is a city in the center of the Alliance of Free Cities. According to the old man's stories, the city has the largest arena on the continent, where a legendary barbarian mercenary called Raging Horns won several tournaments. It immediately clicks for the hero, and he deduces that the bandits mistook him for the famous gladiator. Scratching his head, the servant finds it bizarre that such a celebrity would leave a life of luxury to visit some backwater in the middle of the woods. Whimpering on the ground, the criminal says the gang leader swore he was best friends with the gladiator, and that he would come running to help if needed. In the thief's memory, the gang leader was always threatening everyone with the imminent arrival of his invincible partner. Between sobs, the bandit reveals that the gang lost territory to some rivals, which is why the leader called for help from the famous fighter. With a sigh of pity, the old man tells the scumbag that they were played for fools by their own leader. Logically, the old man argues that a true rich friend would have given them money to start a business in the big city, not leave his partner living in a cave. Faced with this raw truth, the crony is left speechless. Slowly, it dawns on the criminal that his boss had been lying his whole life about his connections. In his thoughts, the hero concludes that the rival gang will come for revenge anyway, so the best offense is a preemptive defense. Besides, he figures that looting scumbags doesn't weigh on anyone's conscience. To improve the plan, he hopes to score some good weapons during the raid on their hideout. Completely confused, the thief hears the giant's mumblings as his fate is sealed. In a quick, silent blow, the barbarian erases the last bandit from the face of the earth. Grabbing the guide by the collar of his shirt, our guide drags the old man, who screams desperately for him to stop. A short time later, the duo arrives at the entrance of the enemy lair, protected by 2 guards. Deep inside the cave, the gang leader rests comfortably on a makeshift throne. Filled with worry, the leader Graham massages his chin, trying to come up with a defense plan. In his thoughts, he repeats the old lie that he's thick as thieves with the legendary mercenary. Reliving his past glory, the man remembers his days fighting in the Aegon arena, swearing he was an invincible warrior. Suddenly reality hits hard, and he panics, remembering he only had one shameful victory before retiring. Slumping on his throne, the coward confesses to himself that he made up the call for help just to stall his own crew. With a defeated expression, he wonders where his life went so wrong. His only dream was to live peacefully, robbing travelers with the fools who believed his lies. Furious, he blames the rival gang for invading their territory and ruining the criminal peace they had. Wishing for a miracle, the leader begs for help from the fake warrior until he hears desperate screams echoing down the tunnel. Bloody, one of the cronies bursts into the hall, screaming for help at the top of his lungs. In total desperation, the criminal pleads for his life but takes a brutal blow to the back on the spot. Stuck in his seat, the leader's eyes widen at the massacre that has just invaded his hall. The crony's body falls hard to the floor, revealing a bloody axe embedded straight in his back. Completely terrified, the leader gulps, not understanding the situation. With firm steps, the giant enters the room, crushing the corpse with his heavy boot. Seeing the barbarian attire and absurd muscles, the leader thinks the fake miracle has finally become a reality. Covered from head to toe in his crony's blood, our hero faces the coward and coldly asks who's the boss here. Paralyzed with fear, the gang owner stammers, trying to form a simple word. Impatient, the warrior repeats the question as a murderous aura fills the hall. With a focused gaze, the leader finally manages to see the monstrous invader's face. It immediately clicks for the fake friend, revealing that this giant is definitely not the gladiator from the arena. Assessing the pool of blood on the floor, he realizes all the guards outside have already been sent to the great beyond. Cornered, the leader concludes that even though he's a stranger, this barbarian is an extremely high-level threat. In a survival instinct, the leader jumps from his chair, slamming his fist on the wooden armrest. With a war cry, the redhead throws a charge punch, trying to surprise the giant with a frontal assault. Like a concrete wall, our MC catches the punch with his bare hand and compliments the opponent's dumb courage. Trembling with effort, the gang leader's eyes widen, feeling his own arm nearly break in the warrior's iron grip. With a quick motion, the warrior wipes the blood from his sword and lets out a confused grunt. With a loud thud, the gang leader collapses to his knees in the dust. Desperate, the redhead begs for his life and announces he's already bowing preventively. With his face covered by shadows, the guy tells the thief to stop calling him boss, while the coward offers the money from his chest. Never missing a joke, the cowardly guide compliments the bandit's begging posture, remembering he was in the same boat just a little while ago. Trembling from head to toe, the leader notices the sword rising and asks in a panic if the invader wants anything else. Firm in his purpose, our MC raises the weapon even higher, and the scumbag shouts, promising to pay eternal tribute. Closing his eyes, the redhead curses his own luck for having survived the brutal arena, only to meet his end in such a pathetic way. Suddenly, the coward's eyes fly open in total shock. Near his face, the big guy shows off that old rusty, blood-soaked axe. Terrified by the blade, the leader screams at the top of his lungs and offers a treasure map in exchange for his life. With a trembling voice, he guarantees the paper shows the exact location of dwarven throwing axes. Immediately, the barbarian's fury freezes upon hearing the name of that famous race of blacksmiths. Seizing the opening, the kneeling bandit confirms the information, swearing the artisans put their souls into the weapons. Curious about the news, the tank sheathes his sword and tells the criminal to continue the story. With a relieved smile, the redhead realizes he's caught the giant's interest and points out that this item is rare even on the black market. To sell his pitch, the thief claims the blade never dulls and even hits its targets on its own, as if by magic. In his thoughts, the hero remembers that dwarven items have absurd stats and overpowered special effects. According to the old game's logic, the race hated humans and would never sell their treasures willingly. Stuck in the real world now, the guy knows very well that getting his hands on such equipment has become an almost impossible mission. Focused on his goal, he decides he can't miss this golden opportunity to get a high-performance weapon. Impatient, the brute extends his hand, demanding the map on the spot. Trying to act smart, the leader scowls and demands a guarantee of his life before handing over the prize. With a cold smile, the warrior finds it comical that a simple scumbag is trying to set the rules with him. In a deadly lunge, like a bolt of lightning, the blade cuts through the air without warning. Straight into the flesh, the steel tears the bandit's shoulder, who freezes in shock on the spot. Screams of pure agony echo in the cave as the hero says he's also a great negotiator. Exuding a psycho aura, the barbarian promises to poke holes in the coward until he looks like a perforated rag. Completely broken by terror, the gang leader cries in pain, unable to form a sentence. Cutting the scene to the enemy base, the redhead's voice resonates, swearing he saw the map with his own eyes in the rival's fortress. Right in front of the throne, a rival crony argues that the red-headed leader does nothing but lie all the time. Annoyed by the shouting, the big guy of the opposing gang slams his hammer on the floor, telling everyone to shut up. Sitting on his rustic throne, the rival leader tries to make sense of the madness he just heard. With a stern face, Creven questions if the famous gladiator really came to the middle of the woods to help some beggars. Terrified, the subordinates confirm the absurd story with their heads bowed. Skeptical to the bone, the bearded leader asks if there's any logic to all this. To prove the truth, the lookout stammers, claiming he saw a giant barbarian the size of a bear with the rival. With a hand on his chin, Creven analyzes the old rumors about the friendship between the redhead leader and the arena celebrity. Using his brain, he quickly concludes that the enemy just hired some random big guy to pull a blatant bluff. However, caution speaks louder, and the leader admits he can't risk a head-on clash with an unknown monster. Suddenly, a soldier bursts into the hall, screaming that the fortress is under attack by the enemy gang. Leaping up, the bearded leader rises from his throne and demands to know the size of the invading army. In a cold sweat, the messenger reports that it's just 2 guys, and one of them is the blasted giant from the legends. Absolutely shocked, Creven realizes the audacity of the attack and concludes that the duo can handle themselves. With a drop of sweat running down his face, the leader accepts that the situation has gotten completely out of control. Assessing the danger, the bearded leader declares that a frontal assault is certain suicide. Gripping his hammer firmly, he orders the archers to hide in the trenches and fire at the first sign of movement. In a swift motion, the leader grabs a mysterious wooden chest from the table. With his plan set, the big guy walks to the exit, wanting to see the truth with his own eyes. His only goal now is to confirm if the invader is indeed the living legend of the gladiator arena. Far away in the woods, the red-headed leader cries in pain, saying the enemy base is just ahead. Trembling with terror, he asks if the giant really has the guts to invade the rival fortress. Glaring at the scumbag, the warrior questions if the treasure map story was just another lie. In a total panic, the coward denies the accusation and swears the relic was stolen along with the lost territory. Breathlessly, the redhead tries to explain that invading a huge gang's nest through the front door is pure madness. Straight to the point, the hero asks the army's size, and the thief lies, saying it's 100 men, hoping to force a retreat. Celebrating the fake withdrawal, the coward suggests they hire a battalion before attempting the invasion. Grabbing the hostage by the collar, the barbarian says that taking out 100 people will be tiring, so they'd better hurry up to finish before sunset. Completely speechless, the redhead lets out a pathetic whimper and freezes in the face of the mercenary's insanity. Step by step, the duo finally reaches the clearing, coming face to face with the bearded leader and his cronies. With his arms crossed, the rival gang leader faces the invaders with a threatening posture. Yelling at the top of his lungs, the bearded man mockingly greets them and demands to know the reason for their suicidal visit. Pulling courage from nowhere, the redhead shouts back, announcing the total destruction of the enemy gang. Pointing to the hero, the liar introduces his fake partner as the legendary, undefeated champion of the arena. Gripped by fear, the soldiers take a step back upon hearing the living legend's name. With a wicked smile, the redhead calculates that the fight will focus on the giant, opening the perfect chance for him to escape. Suddenly, the warrior's huge hand grabs the coward's head, crushing the plan at its root. Lifting the human trash into the air, our MC shouts to the rival army that he's not the celebrity and doesn't want a pointless fight. Exuding a calm aura, the guy tries to be diplomatic and proposes to solve the issue without bloodshed. Immediately, a smile of pure malice appears on the bearded leader's face, celebrating the revelation. Ignoring the mockery, the tank reinforces once more that he's only here to get an item and will leave in peace. Without looking away, the warrior warns that the offer to avoid a massacre is still on the table. For now, certain of victory, the rival leader deduces that the mercenary gave up on the contract after seeing the hidden army. Furious with the arrogance, the big guy doesn't understand how some random mercenary can still act superior even when surrounded by his end. To show his boss, the giant hammer slams into the stone, sending cracks everywhere. With the archers in position, the situation heats up. In the shadows, the cronies load their crossbows, ready to attack. With no way out, the giant spots the deadly ambush around him. In a cynical tone, the bearded leader proposes cooperation and asks what the mercenary wants. Without beating around the bush, our MC says he came for a map and tells the guy to clear the way. Surprised by the answer, the big guy repeats the word, map, not quite understanding. At that moment, the leader holds up the ancient scroll, questioning if that's what the warrior is looking for. Upon seeing the paper, the redhead panics, asking how the enemy got the treasure. With a wide smile, the bearded man reveals he found the secret headache and took the relic. Full of mockery, he taunts the mercenary for making the whole trip just for a piece of paper. With narrowed eyes, our hero just analyzes the situation in complete silence. Savoring the taste of victory, the gang leader lets out an arrogant laugh. In a sudden move, the bearded man tears the map in half, driving the redhead completely insane. Moved by desperation, the red-headed leader charges and bites the bearded man's arm with all his might. Caught by surprise, the giant lets out a scream of pain and curses the prisoner, calling him a psycho. Ticked off, the bearded man crumples the rest of the map and challenges the barbarian to get the pieces. With pure sarcasm, he warns that the warrior only gets the treasure if he can survive. Cold as ice, our guy gladly accepts the offer. In his head, the plan is clear. He needs to get the paper before it reaches the enemy's stomach. Wasting no time, the leader shouts the order to attack and tells the troops to fire without mercy. In that same instant, fingers pull the heavy crossbow triggers. A rain of bolts soon cuts through the air at high speed. With absurd reflexes, the hero's eyes catch the imminent danger. Quick on the draw, the giant grabs the redhead's collar in a brutal jerk. Desperate, the poor guy is lifted off the ground, not understanding the maneuver. Like a human shield, the redhead's body takes the first volley of arrows. Screams of pure agony echo as blood splatters everywhere. Faced with the bizarre scene, the bearded man's eyes widen, unable to believe the opponent's coldness. Riddled with holes, the human shield cries in pain and feels his end approaching. Perplexed, the rival leader realizes the mercenary sacrificed his own client without a second thought. With a new tactic, the bearded man orders the troops to aim for the parts not protected by the human shield. Quickly, the archers reload their weapons under extreme tension. In the meantime, the brute throws his axe with full force. Caught by surprise, one of the cronies only sees the steel flying towards him. In a brutal impact, the blade cracks the archer's head on the spot. With a dull thud, the criminal's body plummets from the tower. With his arm extended, our MC shows off the attack's lethal precision. In a total panic, the bandits scream about the barbarian's long-range attacks. Suddenly, another rain of bolts hits the poor redhead head-on. However, one arrow passes straight through and pierces our hero's hand. Completely perforated, the redhead curses everyone and begs to be put out of his misery. Furious with the poor aim, the bearded man unleashes on the archers for missing the main target. Impatient, he changes the plan again and orders the infantry to advance. With a war cry, the cronies run like madmen at the warrior. Useless now, the human shield is thrown to the ground like trash. Lying on the ground, the redhead coughs up blood on the verge of his end. Assessing the number of enemies, the warrior concludes that the sword's normal healing won't solve the problem. Focused on victory, he announces that the massacre ends quickly and decisively now. From a distance, the rival leader sees the giant drink something and thinks it's just water for his fatigue. But the effect of the mid-tier blood hits hard, and the hero feels an absurd power flowing through his veins. With tense muscles, he grips the sword's hilt with extreme firmness. Soon his eyes glow with a purely insane blood-red hue. Believing in their victory, the criminals mock the barbarian and tell him to get up and take his beating. In the blink of an eye, the big guy simply vanishes from everyone's sight. Fast as lightning, the blade slices the first bandits in half. Heads fly and black blood gushes in a scene of total desperation. In the system, a notification confirms the activation of the demon's blood bonus. Like a hurricane, our MC tears through the entire horde without acknowledging anyone. In shock, the survivors scream about the target's inhuman speed. With his agility maxed out, the sword becomes a deadly blur. Cries for help echo across the battlefield amidst the butchery. In tears, the troop begs their leader to do something against that phantom. Cold and calculating, the bearded man analyzes the slaughter and tries to understand the logic of the movements. In the middle of the chaos, the warrior exudes a demonic aura and finishes off another piece of trash. With a lump in his throat, the rival leader realizes he's dealing with a real monster. To turn the tables, the big guy demands a heavy crossbow on the spot. With strength in his arms, he loads the lethal weapon himself and aims into the confusion. In his mind, the leader is certain that no one runs forever, and eventually, the target will stop. Observing the slaughter, he calculates the perfect distance for the fatal shot. As predicted, the barbarian slows his pace to choose his next victim. At the exact moment of the opening, the bearded man shouts the order to attack. With a violent crack, the giant bolt cuts through the air towards the hero. Tearing through the wind, the arrow passes through the dead carcasses at incredible speed. At the last second, the guy's red eyes catch the extreme danger coming his way. With a wicked smile, the leader celebrates the perfect shot with pure satisfaction. Tearing through the wind, the giant arrow travels straight for the hero's head. With absurd reflexes, the warrior turns his head at the very last millisecond. Certain of victory, the bearded leader lets out a smile and celebrates the hit. Immediately the arrow stops in midair with a dry thud. In total shock, the leader's expression changes from joy to pure terror. Just inches from the red eye, the bolt freezes in the air. Surprised and incredulous, the bearded man stammers, trying to process the impossible scene. With firm hands, the giant catches the arrow's shaft and prevents the fatal impact. In a mocking tone, the MC stares at the enemy in a terrifying way. Behind the trenches, the archers panic upon seeing the scene. Taking a deep breath, the leader admits the mercenary caught the bolt with his bare hand. Terrified, the troop stammers that the giant crossbow bolt should pierce a bear clean through. Step by step, the tank turns his body towards the archer's tower. With the bolt in hand, the hero threatens and points the weapon at the hidden cowards. In desperation, the leader shouts for his cronies to reload the crossbows as fast as possible. Yelling, the bearded man asks how many crossbows are ready to fire. Trembling with fear, an archer says there are only 3 loaded weapons left. Faced with this, the leader gulps and says he'll come up with a new plan. With his hand on the handle of his hammer, the big guy prepares for defense. Firmly on the ground, he plants his weapon and waits for the enemy's next attack. To everyone's surprise, the barbarian pulls his arm back and throws the giant arrow as if it were a common dart. At that same moment, the projectile cuts through the wind straight towards the leader. With pure brute force, the hero charges right behind the bolt in a colossal leap. Realizing the trap, the bearded man understands the play immediately. With his hammer at the ready, he realizes that hitting the arrow will only open his guard for the warrior to attack. Focused, he spins his body and hits the axe on the target to deflect the deadly bolt. With a furious roar, the leader insults the barbarian and brings down his giant hammer. In the brutal clash, the hammer shatters the earth and kicks up a cloud of dust. Blinded by the smoke, the bearded man loses sight of the warrior for a second. Immediately, he hears the guy shout and realizes the fatal flaw in his move. From above, the warrior soars through the air, aiming for the frightened archers in the trench. With a wicked smile, he understands the rival leader's useless strategy. In the air, the big guy firmly grabs the arrow and prepares the deadly throw. Desperate, the archer screams upon seeing the bolt cutting through the air towards the tower. With a loud thud, the arrow sinks into the wooden wall by a hair's breadth. In an insane leap, the warrior arrives, shattering the weapon with his closed fist. In the same instant, the hero throws the wooden splinters, hitting the archer in the eye on the spot. Feeling the pain, the crony falls from the tower, leaving the space clear. Quick as lightning, our MC seizes the opening and grabs another giant arrow. Eyeing the ground, he prepares to pounce and turns his attention straight to the bearded leader. From above, the hero challenges the big guy to block the return attack. Furious, the leader grabs his hammer and vows to crush the mercenary's head. Yelling, the barbarian descends from the sky in the blink of an eye with the bolt in hand. In a bizarre clash, the hammer and the arrow collide with extreme force. In the middle of the tension, a sinister crack resonates, and the bearded man's eyes widen in astonishment. With his hammer on the ground, the leader retreats, frightened and stammering wordlessly. Cold as stone, the warrior bites the shattered arrow between his teeth. Frightened, the leader notices the absurd level of that close-range attack. Taking the splinter from his mouth, the hero lets out a diabolical smile. Ticked off, the tank tells the guy to wait while he cleans up the rest of the trash there. Screams of pure agony confirm that the barbarian left no one alive in the shadows. With a heavy thud, the blood-soaked sword drives into the ground before the kneeling leader. Cold and serene, the hero cleans his stained hands and faces the desperate leader. In a cold sweat, the coward begs for mercy and swears he has surrendered for good. Impatient, our guy says he just wants to get the map back without any hassle. In a desperate cry, the bearded man guarantees he has memorized the entire treasure route. In a panic, he dictates the path and mentions the perforated stone in the center of Molden Fortress. Curious, the hero questions why the thieves didn't seek the treasure if they knew the exact location. Fearfully, the leader reveals that Molden is surrounded by armies and soldiers armed to the teeth. Completely surprised, the MC demands an explanation about the siege and why the military is blocking the passage. According to the Redhead, the Lord of Molden made demonic pacts, and now the Paladins have ordered his execution. Faced with the news, the hero realizes the whole story has become 1,000 times more complicated than it seemed. Coldly, he declares his patience has run out and tells the guy to repeat his earlier challenge. Desperate, the bearded man stammers, denying the lie, and cries at the top of his lungs. Without hesitation, the guy brings his sword down with extreme fury to cut open the opponent's belly and retrieve the map. The next day, back at the camp, the servant hands over a bizarre pile of blood-soaked paper. Frightened, the old man asks how the heck he's supposed to read that disgusting puzzle. In a normal tone, the barbarian explains that he cut the guy's belly open and pulled the pieces back out straight from his stomach. Nauseated by the situation, the guide pieces the papers together and confirms that the fortress route indeed matches the bandit's story. Sighing deeply, the tank comments that at least the headache wasn't a total waste. Changing focus, the hero reflects on the gossip about Molden and the so-called Lord who became a servant of demons. Far away, divine knights invade a small village, demanding taxes and information. With a cynical smile, the blonde paladin pressures an elderly peasant, forcing him to tell the truth about a barbarian fugitive. In tears, the old man stammers that no suspicious person has crossed these lands in recent weeks. Baring her teeth, the paladin of Elga touches the tip of her holy blade to him and challenges the villager to swear on his life before the gods. Pressuring the old man, the paladin demands the truth about the heretic and promises vengeance if he lies. With the blade at the villager's neck, she demands the sacred oath before the Lord of Light, Elga. Desperate, the man nods his head and agrees to the demands on the spot. Coldly, the blonde warrior locks her gaze on the peasant and asks if he swears on his very soul. She then adds the order, forbidding any resident from spilling the beans about the mysterious mercenary or the dispatched demon. In the old man's memory, the barbarian's threat echoes clearly, promising a massacre if they told the truth. With the warrior's murderous gaze burned into his mind, the peasant realizes he's caught in a brutal crossfire. Trembling and in a cold sweat, the old man swears loyalty to the church to save his own skin. Suspicious, the blonde knight finds the story strange, as she found very recent tracks of the target nearby. Stuttering in pure terror, the villager and his wife tearfully assure her that no mercenary has set foot in the village. Sighing in irritation, the woman confesses she never even mentioned the profession of mercenary during the interrogation. In that same second, the couple realizes their fatal mistake and freezes in terror before the holy leader. Fixing her deadly gaze on the two liars, the paladin understands she's been played for a fool. Quickly, the knight draws the hilt of her holy sword with a violent crack. Screaming, the couple begs for mercy as terror grips the entire village. Shrill screams tear through the dark night, coming from deep within the village. In a panic, the leader's wife runs and tries to hide the reason for the gruesome noise. Without a shred of patience, the paladin just crosses her arms and demands an immediate explanation. Intrigued by the bizarre sound, she advances and confirms her demonic suspicion. On the dirt floor, one of the rescued children contorts and makes monstrous noises. Cold as stone, the warrior decrees that the child has a demon seed in her body. Crying buckets, the mother denies the accusation and lies about the girl having a birth defect. In silence, the woman draws her blessed sword and prepares the purification ritual. Yelling, the peasant woman throws herself at the knight's feet and begs for her sick daughter's life. With a firm voice, the paladin recites the prayer of the Lord of Light, asking for mercy for the corrupted lamb. Ignoring the mother's tears, the holy blade comes down hard and ends the child's life on the spot. In a blinding flash, divine energy burns away the remains of the demonic corruption. Feeling the warm magic in the air, the villagers watch the gruesome miracle in a state of shock. In tears, the mother holds her daughter's body, while the knight declares the salvation of the infected soul. Without showing any compassion, the warrior vows that the purification has erased the marks of the beast forevermore. According to the Empire's sermon, the girl now rests in divine peace, far from the fury of monsters. Sobbing uncontrollably, the peasant woman thanks her for the sacrifice, while hugging the cold girl. Out of nowhere, the woman's back glows with an unstable and dangerous energy. In a sudden blow, the holy sword sinks into the mother's back, gushing divine flames. Cruelly, the paladin explains that anyone infected by evil must become a purifying sacrifice. With wide eyes, the woman doesn't understand the punishment and feels her life slipping away. Screaming with torn lungs, the peasant woman burns alive in front of the entire village. Cynically, the knight tells them not to cry, for now mother and daughter can rest together under Elga's blessing. To deliver the final message, the paladin kicks the charred body and warns of the price of lies and cowardice. Threateningly, she demands the naked truth if the villagers want to avoid the eternal fire. With terror implanted in the survivors' minds, she asks about the exact whereabouts of the heretic barbarian. Far from the village and the divine massacre, our MC rests at a makeshift camp in the middle of the forest. Reflecting on the raid, he comments that looting the bandits secured plenty of food for the journey. With a grim face, the mercenary grumbles about the lack of high-level equipment in the rival's nest. Faced with the warrior's silence, the cowardly servant tries to break the ice with gossip from the Molden region. Recounting the rumors, the old man swears that the demon baron built a wonderful city, according to a local merchant's story. Suspicious, the old man concludes that cruel leaders don't get the title of great warrior or peaceful lord for nothing. Agreeing with the theory, the guy states that demons only bring ruin and suffering to humans who make pacts with them. With his mind on the mission, the hero realizes that only by invading the castle can he prove the paladin's lie and recover the dwarven weapon. Pulling out the canteen with the demon's weak blood, he wonders if the amount will be enough for the army at the border. Somewhat uncertain, the servant interrupts his boss's thoughts with a question that's been nagging him for a while. Staring at the giant, the old man asks who has the right to use the sacred title of Great Warrior of Atala. In a mix of shock and fear, the old man reveals that the arena legend, Raging Horns, also calls himself that. In that same moment, a vein pops on our MC's forehead, and hatred dominates his expression. Trembling all over, the old man throws himself face down on the ground and apologizes for his audacity. Cold and terrifying, the barbarian ignores the guide's show and explains the ancient rules of his own deity. According to the guy, the title isn't just a nickname but a heavy, bloody burden given to the one tasked with exterminating the archdemon. Immersed in memories, he sees the god Atala blessing the chosen warrior with overwhelming power. Because of this, logic dictates that the wannabe gladiator used the title lightly just to gain clout. Another gruesome hypothesis raises the chance of there being two heroes, or that the divine god has switched his official avatar. In a fit of silent rage, the MC fist smashes a rock with a violent crack. Suppressing his hatred, he tells the old man to get up and says the march begins before sunrise. Relieved, the servant gets up, dusting himself off, and agrees on the spot. Away from the fire, the giant hides his tension and promises to crush the imposter at the first opportunity. With bloodshot eyes, the decision becomes a promise of certain doom for the fake arena champion. At dawn, the scene shifts to the gigantic Molden fortress, surrounded by well-armed guards. On the stone walls, Imperial patrols tirelessly watch every inch of the region. Elite soldiers march in organized files, ready for the imminent war. Men with heavy shields and spears block the drawbridge and local trails. Hidden in the dense woods, the duo spies on the army blocking the passage from end to end. Desperate, the old man mutters that there's no opening for a giant to discreetly enter the castle. Pragmatic, the hero tells the old man to find a hole to hide in until the dust settles. Shocked by the order, the guide asks if his boss plans to face hundreds of spearmen head-on at the same time. With a wicked smile, the barbarian swears he will use the night to silence the sentinels and cross the phantom barrier. Suddenly, a deafening creak of chains draws their attention, and the castle's main gate begins to open on its own. Completely shocked, the old man points to the wide, open gate and asks the reason for this madness. Quick-witted, the barbarian deduces that Baron Molden is planning an all-out attack against the enemy army. With no patience for theories, the warrior says there's no time to waste, and tells the servant to hold on tight to his clothes. With a rough push, the hero launches himself off the rock with both feet. Like a cannonball, the giant leaps from the thicket with the old man screaming on his back. Straight to the point, the tank announces they are going to break through the wall of soldiers all at once. Oblivious to the danger, the Imperial spearmen maintain their formation with shields raised. Suddenly, a soldier notices the threatening shadow approaching with long strides. In a millisecond, the red figure tears through the morning mist. With the force of a hurricane, the barbarian smashes through the first shield, sending the man flying. Blood gushes into the air as the soldier's formation begins to buckle under the impact. Looking at the carnage, the warriors stare at the scene of pure terror. Driven by hatred, the big guy crushes the next target's chest with a deafening thud. Without showing any compassion, the human monster clears the path with crushing blows. Screaming, the survivors realize their friends are falling, but no one retreats from the front line. Ignoring their courage, the hero spreads chaos with his bloody fists and breaks through the human barrier. With a final stomp, his heavy boot finishes off a fleeing soldier on the ground. Emerging from the bloody fog, the warrior takes a deep breath, focused on the still, open gate. A brutal blow finishes off the last resistance, sending another body to the dirty ground. Cutting a path through the troops, the barbarian stops in front of the resistance group. Breathing the cold air, our MC exudes a scarlet aura before the tired soldiers. Behind the gate, desperate men hold spears and swords against the newly arrived monster. Immediately, the warrior sheathes his sword and gets into a guard stance. Curious about the lone massacre, the man in elegant armor asks the invader's identity. Introducing himself firmly, the blonde man declares himself Baron Molden in the flesh. Glaring at the guy, the hero questions why a leader with a demonic pact would be on the front line alone. Desperate, the Lord denies the accusations about demons and tries to explain his enemy's lie. Cutting the drama short, the Barbarian demands the Lord prove the truth about the accusations face to face. In tears, the noble refuses the offer and vows he must defend his own people in the imminent war. Without a shred of patience, the big guy tells the Lord to shut his mouth because his time will come. Sighing in pain, the Baron wonders where exactly he went wrong as the leader of that fiefdom. Trembling with exhaustion, the soldiers offer water pouches for their master to catch his breath. Gently, the Lord thanks them for their effort and remembers the easier times of the young warrior Delton. Striking up a conversation with the soldier, he praises the kid's growth and assures him his family would be proud. In a melancholic tone, the Baron takes the blame for the suffering of everyone present. Completely loyal, the young recruit vows that the enemy Adlin's lies won't shake the castle. Leaning against the wall, the leader appreciates the support but refuses to see such young men perish because of him. Silently, he watches the sun rise through the window as memories flood his exhausted mind. Through the window, his wife comments with relief that the warm days have finally arrived after the harsh winter. Sweetly, the woman mentions they no longer need to worry about running out of firewood and praises the beauty of the landscape. Out of nowhere, she recalls the Baron's request to buy colorful tulips from distant merchants of the Alliance. Surprised, the leader just looks to the side, not understanding the reason for remembering old flower seeds now. Reflecting with an empty gaze, he admits he felt the need to beautify the barren lands around the stone castle. With a sad smile, the lady points out that in a place where panic reigns, tulips would do good for the hearts of the distressed people. According to the woman, the flowers bloom in spring and would spread joy within the walls of the gloomy castle if everything were normal. Unfortunately, the harsh reality reveals that the starving children dug up the earth to devour the planted tulip bulbs. With a heavy heart, the lady confesses she didn't have the courage to scold the hungry children. Closing his eyes, the Baron blames his own actions and explains that the 4-month siege drained their winter supplies to the last. Faced with the threat of the enemy, Viscount Adlin, he won't allow his people to face well-armed soldiers with hose in hand. With a trembling voice, he promises to surrender with honor today and end the Viscount's excuse to take out innocents. In tears, his wife hugs her husband and denies that he has any profane alliance with demons of darkness. Cold and objective, the leader retorts that truth and justice no longer matter in the current situation. His final plan requires that if the enemies attack after his sacrifice, messengers must run and reveal the truth to the Empire or seek asylum in the Alliance of Cities. Confessing his deep love, the Baron hands the keys of Molden to his wife to lead wisely. Willing to end the siege and give up his own title, he descends to the castle gate to face the enemy. Back to the insane combat, the guards check if their leader survived the brutal attack. Intrigued by the Barbarian's overwhelming presence, the Baron tries to process who the heck the Red Warrior is. Suddenly, the sound of military boots cracks loudly on the ground right behind Molden's defense line. Armies of soldiers march relentlessly, brandishing swords and shields against the desperate resistance. In the distance, a spearman prepares and shouts fiercely before charging into the slaughter. With a shrill cry, the soldier points his lethal spear directly at the leader of Molden. Without hesitation, the warrior faces the frontal assault, ignoring the panic of the guards around him. Desperate, the Baron shouts the order to close the gates immediately before the mass invasion. Groaning loudly, the thick castle doors begin to move slowly, protecting the innocents inside. Before the portal, the armed enemies approach, demanding the cursed Baron's head. Retreating step by step, the Lord's men look confusedly at the motionless mercenary on the battlefield. Sighing loudly, the giant assesses the chaotic situation of the army ready to spill others' blood. Turning his head, the Barbarian extends his hand with a loud snap and makes an unusual request. Cold and to the point, he simply tells the soldiers to bring him the sharpest spear they can find. Completely dumbfounded, the leader gulps, watching the giant's muscles explode with a red aura. In the first blow, the tank takes out an enemy with a heavy jolt that shatters their bones. Continuing the slaughter, the thrown spear pierces a soldier's shield and sweeps the victim to the stone floor. Gripped by fear, the soldiers mutter about the monstrous barbarian's bestial strength with the spear. With insane eyes fixed on the next target, the big guy casually swings his arm and demands the trash fall at his feet. Showing pure hatred, the hero faces the crowd of weaklings and orders the next one to come to their certain doom. Wasting no time, the warrior advances and crushes the enemies who get in his way. In a shower of spears and blood, the giant becomes an unstoppable force of nature. Desperate, the guards of Molden watch the massacre and warn that the big guy won't stop. Terrified, the leader shouts for his men to close the fortress doors as quickly as possible. Suddenly, a metallic groan echoes and the main gate jams halfway. In a panic, the soldiers pull the ropes, but the bridge mechanism seems to have failed at the worst possible moment. Tense, the Baron's eyes widen as he sees the exposed entrance while the invader deforms the defense line. Outside, the mercenary lets out an annoyed click of his tongue at the men's lack of organization. Quick to command, the Lord orders the troop to gather in front of the breach to form a human shield. With his sword dripping blood, the hero walks under the stuck gate without a hint of haste. Surprised, the Baron and his men stare as the barbarian stops, right under the heavy iron grate. Suddenly, the warrior presses his palm against the cold metal base of the giant door. Incredulous, the Lord's soldiers wonder if the madman plans to knock down the wall with his fists. With an animalistic roar, our MC flexes his muscles under maximum pressure. With a colossal snap, the chains burst, and the massive structure gives way to the warrior's weight. In total shock, the guards watch the door descend slowly, forced down only by the strength of the lone invader. Yelling orders, the Lord tells the troops to help bring down the gate and throw rocks on top of the giant. Immediately, the order to retreat echoes, and the enemy soldiers get out of the way, fearing their end. Unable to believe it, the leader watches the iron gate crash to the dirt floor thanks to the brute. Exhausted, the warrior pants after the absurd display of brute force he just showed. With a thunderous thud, the grate finishes its fall, kicking up dust all over the entrance. Relieved, the guards of Molden realize they are finally safe inside the castle. Putting his pride aside, the guy sighs heavily and stabilizes his tired breathing. With the path blocked, he focuses on the castle's leader, who is now trying to process the impossible scene. In a cold sweat, the Baron silently questions if that massive warrior is even truly human. Cold as stone, the giant points at the Lord and proposes a civilized chat. After all the madness, the duo finds themselves in a hall filled with fancy food and expensive wine. Laughing to break the ice, the leader jokes that it's been a long time since he's had such a distinguished guest at his table. Absolutely delirious with hunger, the cowardly servant asks for another plate and devours everything in the blink of an eye. Unfazed, the warrior points out that a castle under siege for 4 months shouldn't have so much food available. With a sad smile, the Lord confesses he'd rather tear out his own flesh than let a guest go hungry. Immediately, the warrior connects the dots and mentions the suicidal honor that led the Lord to the castle gates. Short and to the point, he demands the real story about the demon baron and the military siege mess. Sighing deeply, the noble decides to come clean and says the story goes back a few decades. In his youth, the emperor sent him to lead Molden, and the order seemed more like a sentence to exile. With its barren and dry land, the place was an uninhabitable backwater for most people. However, pure dedication transformed the wasteland into a prosperous and peaceful territory over the years. In peace, he built his own life, dreaming that this isolated paradise would remain safe forever. Nearby was the land of Viscount Adelin, who enjoyed a more fertile but poorly managed territory. When Molden became a success, the neighbor boiled with pure envy and began to concoct dark lies. Overnight, poisonous rumors about a demon baron's satanic rituals infested the entire court. At first, no one paid any mind to the gossipy noble's baseless rumors, until the fourth prince traveled to the region, met the Viscount's daughter, and fell head over heels for the girl. Thanks to this political romance, the neighbor gained absurd power in the empire, and the story took a different turn. With the perfect excuse, Adelin surrounded the isolated city with 400 soldiers to force the imminent massacre. Wordlessly, the warrior listens to it all in silence, absorbing the despair of the wronged lord. After the dramatic account, the Baron turns the tables and demands the identity of the destructive barbarian. Without beating around the bush, the giant says he only ended up there to get something hidden in Molden. Surprised, the leader asks how the mercenary is absolutely sure the castle hides some treasure under the perforated stone. Straight to the point, the guy promises to disappear from there and leave everyone in peace as soon as he gets his hands on the said stone. However, the Lord refuses the offer and states that the castle's basement is a completely forbidden area for outsiders. Scowling, the hero demands an explanation for the pointless prohibition right now. With an apology, the Lord keeps the mystery alive and doesn't reveal the secret of the sub-level. In that same moment, the atmosphere in the room becomes brutally heavy, with the giant's aura filling the air. Shaking like a leaf, the guide notices that the friendly tone of the conversation has vanished in a matter of seconds. Ticked off by the fuss, the warrior faces the Baron, questioning the drastic change in his hospitable attitude. Reinforcing his silence, the noble insists on his refusal and definitively clams up. Annoyed, the hero sighs deeply and admits things were too easy to be true. Suddenly, a thunderous blow smashes the wooden table, sending splinters and plates flying everywhere. In pure terror, the Lord gulps and understands he's truly poked the bear. With the impact of the punch, the table's structure is reduced to junk as the tension reaches its absolute peak. Frightened, the Baron looks at the out-of-control mercenary and expects the worst on the spot. Coldly, the warrior crushes the debris under his military boot in a clear message. Facing the Lord, he lists the 100 tired and useless soldiers protecting the decadent fortress wall. According to the guy, the troops' lack of strength would result in a total slaughter if they tried to fight him now. Pointing a dirty finger, he decrees that all those lives would be exterminated in minutes out of pure whim. In a lethal tone, the hero gives the noble one last chance to guide him peacefully to the blasted perforated stone. In case of refusal, He guarantees that Molden will paint its walls with the blood of the innocents hidden there. In a cold sweat, the leader curses his own stupidity for letting an untamable animal into the locked castle. Cornered and with no way out, the noble agrees to guide the mad giant to the deepest cellars of the place. But suddenly, he raises one final condition to allow passage. Glaring at the guy with red eyes, the hero asks in a deadly tone what kind of condition the noble is demanding. Boldly, the Lord proposes that the invader help defend the castle after his forced suicide on the walls tomorrow morning. As soon as the Viscount attacks amidst the morning, the butler will take the warrior to the sub-level if the enemies retreat. Laughing in the Baron's face, the giant scoffs at the hollow honor of giving up his own life for a dramatic show. In shock, the Lord absorbs the warrior's harsh words. Mercilessly, our MC says that running away to meet your end is just a coward's move. In silence, the Baron reflects on the hard truth. Straight to the point, the guy explains that sacrifice seems noble, but leaving the problem for others is pure selfishness. With a clenched fist, the hero decrees that the path of a warrior of Atala is very different. Even with twisted arms and legs or shattered ribs, the fight goes on. Cold and convinced, he states that facing an invincible enemy until your end is the only true honor. Faced with the sermon, the noble gulps, unable to retort. To break the mood, the barbarian proposes a new offer and asks the leader to listen carefully. At the back of the room, the cowardly servant's eyes widen, astonished by his boss's audacity. After a brief silence, the Baron sighs and agrees to consider the proposal. With a polite gesture, the noble asks the duo to wait in a guest room. Under the guard's escort, the outsiders walk through the castle's corridors. Upon entering the dark room, the big guy immediately takes over the space. Surprised, the guide points to himself upon hearing the order to use the bed to rest. With a light thud, the warrior drops his heavy sword on the wooden floor. Nervously, the old man sits on the edge of the bed and adjusts his clothes. Curious, the old man asks if the leader of Molden will really accept the mysterious offer. With a smirk, the guy guarantees the deal is great, and the noble has no other choice. With a sigh of relief, the merchant confesses he was scared when the Baron's mood suddenly changed. Intrigued, the guide questions the reason for such stubbornness in blocking access to the sub-level. With his gaze fixed on the void, the hero says the reason for this mystery is all too obvious. Completely confused, the old man furrows his brows, not understanding the logic of the situation. Suddenly, the wooden door creaks, cutting the conversation short. With his arms crossed, the barbarian faces the entrance and awaits the visitor. Firm steps mark the arrival of the castle's leader in the middle of the night. Cold as ice, the warrior comments that the answer came faster than expected and asks for the decision. With an affirmative nod, the Baron agrees to the plan and tells the mercenary to get ready. Outside, the full moon illuminates the pitch-black sky. Under the silvery light, the fortress of Molden prepares for the imminent bloodbath. Atop the wall, the night patrol watches the surroundings, spears in hand. Suspicious footsteps echo on the stones, and the guards shout, demanding the intruders' identities. From the shadows, the Baron, disguised in common armor, asks the guard Delton to lower his voice. Completely lost, the soldiers find it strange to see their leader dressed like that in the middle of the night. Without giving any explanation, the noble orders them to focus and forbids any kind of panic. Firmly, he tells the troop to tie a rope to the wall and save the questions for later. In a tone of absolute authority, the leader forbids any soldier from leaving the castle, no matter what happens outside. Focused on the mission, our MC is already holding the thick rope, perched on the edge of the wall. With a precise leap, the giant leaves the safety of the high wall. In a rapid descent, the barbarian tears through the wind in a controlled freefall. Impressed, the guards admit they've never seen someone with that much weight move so agilely. Right after, the Baron grabs the rope and receives the faithful guard's vows of protection. With a focused gaze, the Lord faces the dark abyss of the battle that awaits them. Facing the soldiers, the leader inspects the resistance troop one by one. In a farewell tone, he entrusts the castle's safety to the patrol and declares that the city is worth more than his own life. Touched by their leader's words, the guards hold back tears and maintain their posture. Without looking back, the Lord slides down the rope and descends the dark stone wall. On solid ground, the mercenary waits impatiently and asks if the show is over. With his helmet adjusted, the Baron confirms he is ready for war. With a metallic snap, the barbarian draws his sword and announces that it's time to exterminate the so-called Viscount Adlin once and for all.